The Meridian Ring was a scar of light against the void, a chaotic orbit of welded-together stations, salvaged cruisers, and spinning asteroids repurposed into markets. It hung in the twilight territory between three minor star systems, technically under the loose oversight of the Aurelian Star Empire, which meant the Empire only collected tariffs and looked the other way, unless something exploded too loudly. Here, 1,000 species haggled, stole, and traded, towering. Insectoid, Kathir merchants clicked their mandibles over glowing energy crystals. Gelatinous ooze lords from Pleda bartered information in burbled whispers. And then, there were the humans. Humans were the cosmic oddity. They were few, scattered, and held no real territory out here. They were known for two things: technology that looked like it was held together with hope and rust, but somehow outperformed military-grade hardware, and tactics that defied all known logical modeling. They were the galaxy's weird, unpredictable tenants, and most species gave them a wide berth, unsure if they were dealing with genius or insanity. Adrian Cole was perfectly happy to be considered insane, so long as he was left alone. He was a human, middle-aged in a way that spoke more of weariness than years, and he ran Maintenance Bay 37 on the ring's rustiest, outermost edge. The bay was his sanctuary, a cavern of pitted metal, dangling power conduits, and the familiar smell of ozone and lubricant. He was, by all official records, a nobody, a low-grade technician licensed for impulse engines and recycler units. Sometimes, rumors surfaced. A grizzled Vaxter pilot, waiting for an exhaust patch, would eye the precise, economical way Adrian calibrated a fuel injector. "Heard you were the one," the pilot might slur, leaking methane from his rebreather. "The architect, the one who designed the Scylla blockade." Adrian would just wipe his hands on an already black rag, his expression flat. "I just fixed the engines, Vax. And you've got a coolant leak that's about to melt your port stabilizer? Pay your bill." The rumors always died, because Adrian Cole was aggressively, profoundly boring. He clocked in, he fixed what was broken, and he clocked out. He avoided politics, he avoided entanglements, and he especially avoided anything related to the Aurelian Empire. His shift was winding down. 4 more hours and he could retire to his small habitation pod, eat a synthesized protein bar, and read an ancient digital copy of a book about seas and fish that no longer existed. It was a good life, a quiet life. Then the universe decided he had been quiet long enough. The first warning was not the alarm, but a high-frequency shriek that cut through the station's ambient rumble. It was a sound that did not belong. A sound of stressed, exotic energies. "Bay Command," Adrian grunted into his wristcom, already moving toward the main console. "I am picking up an unscheduled energy signature approaching my dock. Fast." The reply from the ring's traffic control was frantic, drowned in static. "Negative clearance, Bay 37. That is not a registered vessel. It is not a shield. It is breaching the..." The world exploded. The klaxons were a beat too late. A terrific, tearing screech of metal ripped through the bay as something small, fast, and impossibly sleek punched right through the outer hull. It was not a ship built of plates and rivets. It looked biological, like a predator's skull fused with engine technology. It was a biofighter, small, agile, and something no one had seen outside the Aurelian core worlds. It crashed through a gantry, sending catwalks and tool racks spinning, and slammed into the primary docking platform. The impact was catastrophic, buckling 50% of the landing pad into a jagged ruin. Steam and electrical fire erupted. Adrian was already sealed in his emergency hardsuit, his instincts moving faster than his conscious thought. He grabbed a fire suppressant unit and advanced through the smoke, his boots crunching on debris. The biofighter was a wreck, its organic metal fuselage cracked and weeping luminous blue fluid. But the worst damage was its unique propulsion system. Lying 20 feet from the main chassis, severed and sputtering, was a wing. It was not a metal wing. It was a structure of living crystal and fibrous. Muscular tissue, bound by conduits that glowed with a faint, pulsing light. Even broken, it was beautiful and terrifyingly advanced. It looked less like a piece of machinery and more like the opinion of a fallen god. The smoke cleared slightly. The fighter's cockpit, a translucent chrysalis, hissed and cracked open. Adrian raised the suppressant nozzle, bracing himself. Pirates, smugglers, bounty hunters, he had dealt with them all. A figure stumbled out, coughing. It was a girl, or the alien equivalent. She was tall, impossibly slender, with skin that held a faint, metallic, bronze-like sheen. Bioluminescent patterns, like glowing circuitry, ran down her arms and neck, pulsing weakly. On her back was a harness, shattered on one side, where the matching wing should have been. She fell to her knees, breathing hard. Adrian noted the aristocratic slope of her features, the unnatural grace even in her collapse. She was Aurelian, that much was obvious, and not a common one. "Are you armed?" Adrian's voice was a flat bark, filtered by the suit's speaker. The girl, Seren Kalis, looked. Her eyes, deep violet, were wide, but not with the expected arrogance or aggression of an imperial. They were wide with sheer, unadulterated panic. She ignored him. She ignored the fire, the severed wing, and the gaping hole in the side of the bay. She scrambled on her hands and knees back toward the smoking cockpit, crying out in a language he did not understand. "Halt!" Adrian commanded, moving to intercept her. "The reactor core on that thing could be unstable." She pushed past his outstretched arm, digging frantically into the wreckage of her cockpit's interior. Adrian expected her to retrieve a weapon, a data slate, and a survival kit. Instead, she emerged clutching a padded thermal flask. She frantically unclipped it, her hands shaking so badly she almost dropped it. She inspected it, found a large, ugly dent in its side, and her shoulders slumped. A sound of utter despair escaped her. Adrian stood frozen, fire suppressant in hand, utterly bewildered. The pilot of a billion-credit Royal Biofighter, who had just totaled his maintenance bay, was on the verge of tears over a dented teapot. It was, he decided, a very human-like problem to have. The absurdity of it broke his tension. He lowered the nozzle and switched his suit speaker to a calmer, conversational tone. "Well," he said, gesturing to the ruined bay, "I do not think that is covered by my insurance. You might as well come inside." He led her into his small, cluttered office, a pressurized cube of screens and spare parts. She sat stiffly on a stool, still clutching the dented flask as if it were the key to her survival. Adrian cycled the internal air filters, purging the smoke. He pulled off his helmet, revealing a face etched with lines of fatigue and a head of graying brown hair. "Tea?" he asked, pointing to his own mundane, stained electric kettle in the corner. She just stared at him, violet eyes unblinking. "Right," Adrian sighed. He turned his attention to the security feed of the bay. The severed wing lay on the broken dock, its light fading to a dull throb. "That wing, it is biotech, Aurelian." She flinched, pulling the flask closer. "It is damaged." "Damaged is one word for it," Adrian said dryly. "Severed and fried, and leaking bioplasma all over my floor is another. What matters is that it is royal-grade tech, which means whoever you are a long way from home, and someone very important is probably looking for you." He walked back out into the bay, approaching the wing, He knelt, his gloved fingers tracing the crystalline structure. He was no bioengineer, but he understood systems. He understood failure points. And he understood design. His touch was light, almost reverent. Under the grime and plasma burn, his fingers found them sigils. Microscopic runes etched into the crystal framework, invisible to a casual glance. They were signatures of power, conduits of imperial authority. He recognized the specific flow of the matrices, the elegant, lethal efficiency of the energy routing. He knew the design. He knew it because, in another lifetime, in a life he had buried under 20 standard years of grease and anonymity, he had created its ancestors. This girl was not just important. She was royalty, top tier. He stood up, his face a careful, blank mask. This was it. This was the exact political nightmare he had dedicated his life to avoiding. He returned to the office. Seren was watching him, her panic replaced by a fragile, wary composure. "The good news," Adrian said, leaning against the doorframe, "is that the primary energy matrix seems intact. The bad news is the neural interface is shattered. The muscular articulation is fused, and it is completely detached from its power source." "Can you fix it?" she asked, her voice a strained whisper. "I am a mechanic. Kid, I fix freighters. That thing," he gestured to the wing, "that is a work of art. It needs a high-level bioforge, genetic weavers, and a team of Aurelian tech priests. I have a welder and a box of spare capacitors." "Please," she whispered. "I cannot fly without it." "Flying seems to be the least of your problems. Crashing is what you are good at." He saw the despair in her eyes again and sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I cannot fix it. Not properly." He looked at the wing. He looked at his cluttered workshop, piled high with the detritus of a dozen different species technologies. Scavenged Xylos drive cores, a cracked Cathir navigation crystal, a human-made fusion battery from a defunct cargo lifter. "But," he said slowly, "an idea forming. An illogical, chaotic, very human idea. I might be able to patch it." For the next 4 hours, Adrian Cole performed what any sane Aurelian engineer would have called technological heresy. Seren watched, stunned, as he abandoned all known procedures. He did not try to regrow the delicate neural pathways. Instead, he ripped a high-yield data conduit from a dead servitor drone and, using a customized cold solder tool, began to physically splice it into the wing's bioneural cluster. "That is incompatible," she protested, horrified. "The machine code will conflict with the organic matrix. It will cause catastrophic feedback." "Only if you follow the Aurelian manual," Adrian muttered, concentrating. He fed a length of shielded wire into the gap. "Your tech is rigid. It thinks in straight lines. It assumes that if A is broken, you must replace it with another A. Human tech assumes A is broken, B is missing. But if you bolt C onto D and bypass the mainframe, you can get the same result." He worked with a speed and precision that belied his humble station. He took a power module from a phased, industrial-grade cargo lifter, a crude, ugly piece of machinery, and began modifying it to interface with the refined, elegant Aurelian power conduits. He was jamming a truck engine into a racing skiff. It was brutal. It was disrespectful. It was, Seren realized, absolutely brilliant. He did not repair the wing. He violated it. He bypassed the entire sophisticated system of organic regeneration and simply hotwired it. Finally, he stood back, wiping sweat and blue plasma from his brow. The wing was now a hybrid, a grotesque but functional chimera of glowing crystal, dark muscle, and crude, bolted-on human scrap. All right, he said. Connect to your harness. Let us see if this monstrosity takes your arm off. Seren hesitated, then slowly backed into the damaged harness. Adrian locked the patched wing into place. There was a sickening click as mismatched technologies met. Activate it, he ordered. Slowly. She closed her eyes, concentrating. The bioluminescent lines on her skin flared. The wings shuddered. The scavenged human capacitors whined, a sound like a dying animal. Then, with a sudden, brilliant flash, the wing flared to life. It was not the graceful, silent pulse of before. It flickered, it sputtered, and it hummed with a dangerous, unstable energy. But it was on. It flexed, obeying her command. Seren opened her eyes, staring at the patched-together limb. It works. It works at about 40% efficiency, Adrian corrected, already cleaning his tools. It will not survive a high-G maneuver, and it will probably fail in an atmosphere, but it will get you off the station, temporarily, now. About the hole in my bay, Seren cut him off. She had stepped away from the wing, her entire demeanor shifting. The panicked girl was gone, replaced by something older, more formal. She walked to her thermal flask, the dented teapot, and retrieved 2 small porcelain cups from a hidden compartment. She placed them on Adrian's workbench, pushing aside a greasy hydrospanner. With movements of profound, practiced grace, she unsealed the flask. A wave of steam, impossibly fragrant, filled the grimy office. It smelled of mountain blossoms and starlight. She poured a dark amber liquid into both cups. Then she picked one up with 2 hands and presented it to him in a gesture that felt ancient and heavy with meaning. "This is Kesh, the tea of binding," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "My house repays its debts. You have saved a life. You are owed this." Adrian looked at the cup, then her. He knew a ritual when he saw one. He had avoided them for 20 years. But he also knew she would not leave, would not trust him, until he accepted. He took the cup. The porcelain was warm. He sipped. The flavor was complex, hitting his palate in waves sweet, then bitter, then warm. It felt alive. He drank it all. Seren watched him, then drank from her own cup. The ceremony was complete. "Now," she said, her voice hardening slightly, "I must leave. I need passage." She was interrupted by the sudden, intrusive blare of the station's public address system. It was not the usual garbled announcement. This was a crisp, cold, imperial frequency. "Attention, residents of the Meridian Ring. This is Inquisitor Talon Prime. By order of the Aurelian Throne, this sector is now under Imperial lockdown. We are searching for a fugitive, a deserter of royal blood, an Empress, marked by the sign of the Shattered Wings. Cooperate, and your compliance will be noted. Interfere." The voice paused, letting the silence hang. "Interference will be met with terminal prejudice." Adrian felt the tea turn to ice in his stomach. Seren's face went white. She looked at the patched wing, then at Adrian, her eyes wide with a new, colder terror. "They are here," she whispered. Before Adrian could respond, his bay door buzzed, then slammed open. 3 figures in obsidian black armor stood framed in the doorway, rainwater from the ring's malfunctioning weather simulators gleaming on their helmets. They were Inquisitor Talons, the Empire's elite hunter-killers. Faceless, menacing. They scanned the room, their weapons raised. "Maintenance Bay 37, the lead Talon stated. His voice was the same cold, synthesized tone from the broadcast. "You have an unauthorized docking breach." "Tell me about it," Adrian said, forcing a casual, annoyed tone. He waved a hand at the wreckage. Some joy-riding smuggler punched right through. Almost took my head off. Barely got the fires out. The Talon leader ignored him. He and his squad entered, their boots thudding on the metal deck. They were scanning. A handheld device on the leader's wrist was sweeping the room, its sensors tasting the air, the energy signatures. Adrian felt a cold sweat prickle his back. The wing, the royal-grade biotech. Even patched, it would scream on their scanners. The leader's scanner focused on the corner of the office where Seren was trying to shrink into the shadows. "Subject," the Talon commanded. "Step into the light." Seren froze. "Hey," Adrian snapped, stepping between them. "She is my new apprentice, local scavenger. She was just bringing me some parts." The Talon leader looked at Adrian, his featureless black visor seeming to stare right through him. "She is not registered to this bay. Step aside, human." "Look, I pay my docking fees," Adrian grumbled, playing the part of the annoyed local. "You cannot just come in here and harass my staff. She is terrified of Imperials. Bad experience on Cirrus." The leader raised his scanner. The beam flickered over Seren, who was trembling, clutching the empty teacup. The scanner chirped. "Unidentified energy signature," said Talon. "The subject is radiating trace bioplasma. Consistent with." The scanner then swung toward the main bay, toward the wing Adrian had just repaired. The beam hit the patched-together monstrosity. A high-pitched whine erupted from the scanner. On the Talon's wrist-mounted display, a rune flickered to life. A faint, muddled, but unmistakable symbol of Aurelian royalty. "The sign of the wings," the Talon leader whispered. He raised his pulse rifle, aiming it directly at Seren. "We have found the target, Empress Seren Kalis. You will surrender in the name of—" Adrian had a choice. It was the choice he had run from for 2 decades. He could step aside, let them take her. He could go back to his quiet life, his synthesized meals, his old books. They would probably just fine him for the bay damage and execute her quietly. It was the logical, safe, apolitical choice. Or he could betray the single largest military power in the quadrant for a girl who had totaled his dock and then served him tea. Adrian Cole looked at the faceless Inquisitor, at the unwavering barrel of the rifle. He looked at Seren, her knuckles white on the porcelain cup. He made the human choice, the illogical one. "Damn!" Adrian yelled, as if startled. He tripped over a large, open canister of Xylo's brand conductive grease, sitting by his workbench. The entire canister tipped over, splashing thick, viscous fluid directly onto the Talon leader's arm, dousing the scanner and his weapon's trigger guard. There was a violent hiss. Sparks erupted from the scanner as the conductive grease shorted its delicate circuits. The Talon roared in surprise, staggering back, trying to wipe the thick goop off his visor. "Ah, slag," Adrian said, looking mortified. "This stuff, it gets everywhere. I am so sorry. It is just 50 credits a liter, and you are just, well, now it is all over your armor. That is going to be a nightmare to clean." The other 2 Talons raised their rifles, unsure whether to shoot the mechanic or help their leader, who was now cursing as his wrist display died in a puff of smoke. "Look," Adrian said, pointing at the repaired wing. "Is that what you are worried about, that piece of junk?" The leader, wiping grease from his helmet, glared at the wing. "That is Imperial property." "It is Imperial garbage," Adrian countered smoothly, walking over to it. "This girl, she scavenges the outer belt. She brought this maybe an hour ago. Said she found it floating near the old scrap heap on Grid 9. See, he kicked the wing. The human-made capacitors sparked pitifully." Barely functional. I told her I could give her maybe 20 credits for the raw crystal. But the tech is fried. Whoever had it must have been ejected. The Talon leader stared at the wing, then at Adrian, then at the grease dripping from his gauntlet. His logic processors were clearly struggling. The biosignature was present. But the physical evidence was a mess. It looked like exactly what the human described junk. My scanners detected the rune, the Talon insisted, his voice tight with suspicion. Must be residual, Adrian shrugged. Those things hold an energy print for weeks. Look, I want this thing out of here as much as you do. It is leaking fluids I cannot identify, and it is taking up valuable space. If you want it, take it. It is just more trash to me. There was a long, tense silence. The Talon leader looked at his ruined scanner. He looked at his men. His orders were to find an Empress. This greasy mechanic and a terrified scavenger girl in a bay full of literal garbage did not fit the profile. The evidence was muddled. His equipment compromised. We are searching the entire sector, the leader finally bit out, his anger barely contained. If we find you have lied, human, we will vent this entire bay. Understood, Adrian said, raising his hands. Happy hunting, Inquisitor, and truly, my apologies about the grease. That stuff is tricky. The Talons gave him one last burning look, then turned and marched out, their boots echoing their fury. The bay door slammed shut, engaging the lockdown. Seren collapsed against the wall, dropping the teacup. It shattered on the floor. She did not seem to notice. Adrian Cole let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. His heart was hammering. He walked over to the bay door, engaged 3 extra physical locks, and cut the external visual feed. He turned back to Seren, who was shaking, her eyes fixed on the shattered porcelain. They will be back, she whispered. They know. They suspect. Adrian corrected, his voice quiet. All traces of the bumbling mechanic gone. They have no proof, not yet. But you are right. We do not have much time. He went to a dark corner of the bay, behind a stack of radiation shields. He pulled a panel open, revealing a small, dark space filled with humming power conduits. Get in. It is shielded. It will keep you warm, and it will mask your biosignature from any external scans. Stay quiet. She scrambled into the closet without a word. He sealed the panel, leaving her in the dark. Adrian stood alone in his ruined bay. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind the cold, familiar weight of consequence. He had just declared war on the Aurelian Empire. He walked over to the patched biowing, still humming its unstable, jury-rigged tune. He looked at the crude splices, the mismatched parts, the arrogant, beautiful human solution he had forced onto its elegant design. His gloved hand reached out, tracing the glowing crystalline lattice. He avoided the runes of power he had pointed out to the Inquisitor. His fingers drifted lower, toward the base, near the ugly joint where he had bolted the cargo lifter's battery. There, hidden beneath his own messy solder work, was another sigil. It was not Aurelian. It was microscopic, a complex weave of lines that seemed to fold in on itself. It was a signature he had not seen in 20 years. It was his own. He touched the mark. A secret, known only to him, left over from a time when he was not a mechanic but an architect of war. He had not just recognized the design of the wing, he had recognized the core philosophy beneath it, and in patching it, he had inadvertently signed his name on his own ancient, deadly work. Well, Adrian Cole whispered to the empty, burning bay. This complicates things. The quiet in the bay was louder than the explosion had been. It was a pressurized, waiting silence. Adrian let Seren stay in the shielded conduit closet for a full 10 minutes, his eyes fixed on his main console. The Meridian Rings sensor grid. Usually a chaotic, flickering mess of civilian traffic, was being systematically cleaned. He watched as entire sectors of the display went gray, their local sensor feeds flatlining, only to be replaced seconds later by a crisp, blue, Aurelian military overlay. They were not just jamming the ring, they were hijacking it. Section by section, the Inquisitors were blinding the station and imposing their own vision. It was a remote systems override, a digital handcuffing, and it was brutally efficient. His bay, 37, was already deep in the blue tag territory. The Inquisitors were methodical. They were sweeping from the central spire outward. They had bought his spilled grease ruse, but only temporarily. It had muddled the data, created a momentary logical paradox that their rigid protocols could not solve. But they would analyze the encounter. They would cross-reference the energy signatures, and they would be back. His quiet life, purchased with 20 years of meticulous, mind-numbing anonymity, had just evaporated. He was now, officially, a rebel, a collaborator, a target. He cycled the airlock on the conduit closet and pulled the panel open. Seren gasped, her eyes wide. She looked at the sealed bay door, then at him. "They are gone. They are regrouping," Adrian said, his voice flat. He kicked the shattered pieces of the porcelain teacup. "They will be back, and next time, they will not be fooled by a maintenance complaint." "Then we have to leave," she said, pulling herself to her feet. The bronze sheen of her skin seemed paler. "I must leave. I cannot bring this upon you." "A little late for that." Adrian grunted, already pulling up structural schematics of the station. "And where, exactly, do you plan to go?" "Your Highness, the ring is blockaded. There are 3 Inquisitor cutters in a holding pattern right outside this bay. You cannot even walk to the food court without setting off alarms." "There must be a way," she insisted, her voice gaining a desperate edge. "A ship. You have ships." "Get me a passage to the Chiron Nebula. It is neutral territory. From there, I can find allies." "Allies," Adrian repeated, the word tasting like ash. He gestured to the ruined bay. "I am a mechanic. I fix coolant leaks. I do not arrange passage for fugitive empresses. Everyone on this ring is either too scared or too greedy to help you. They will sell you to Malachar before you can even state your price." He paced the length of his office, his mind racing, sifting through 20 years of escape plans he had sworn he would never need. He was trapped. They could not stay here. The wing, even patched, was a beacon. They could not leave. The Inquisitors were at the door. His eyes landed on a secondary monitor, one that showed the feed from the adjacent bay, 36. It was officially listed as decommissioned for decontamination. In reality, it was Adrian's private scrapyard. And in it sat the opportunity. It was an old Starlight-class freighter, a model that had been obsolete for 30 years. It was a brick, a rusted, dented, asymmetrical brick that he had been tinkering with for a decade, mostly out of boredom. Its reactor was cold. Its navigation computer was 3 generations obsolete. "I might have one," he said slowly, the gears clicking into place. "It is a garbage scow. It has no weapons. Its shields are rated for micrometeorites, not for Imperial pulse cannons, and its FTL drive is temperamental." Seren's head snapped up, her violet eyes locking onto his. "Can it fly?" Adrian looked at the mess in his bay, at the spreading pool of blue plasma, at the girl who had brought an Imperial fleet down on his head. He thought of his quiet life, his old books, his protein bars, all gone. He let out a long, weary sigh, the human curse. For a penny, for a pound. I can make it fly, he said, but it will not be pretty, and we do not have much time. But the next 3 station cycles were a blur of controlled chaos. The blockade was tight, no ships in, no ships out. But the ring's internal economy was vast. Adrian sealed his bay, claiming catastrophic structural failure from the smuggler's crash. The Inquisitors were too busy with their sector sweep to bother with one damaged bay for now. This gave Adrian cover. He moved between Bay 37 and 36 through a ventilation shaft he had modified years ago. He worked with a grim, frantic energy. The opportunity was a wreck. He was not repairing it. He was rebuilding it from the scrap up. Seren tried to help, but she was utterly lost. Her world was one of grown, organic technology. The sight of Adrian hammering a superheated metal rivet into place with brute force made her flinch. "You are hitting it," she said, her voice laced with horrified disbelief, as he slammed a wrench against a stubborn fuel line coupling. "It is called percussive maintenance," Adrian grunted, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Standard human engineering. Sometimes the machine spirit is lazy. You have to remind them who is in charge." He worked like a man possessed. He cannibalized the drive core from a quarantined cargo lifter. He rerouted power from the station's main grid, spoofing the usage logs with code so old, so archaic, that the Aurelian system monitors did not even recognize it as an intrusion. He was a ghost in his machine. On the morning of the second cycle, he was slumped over the freighter's engine block, having worked for 18 hours straight. His hands were raw, his eyes burning. He smelled it before he saw it, the scent of mountain blossoms and starlight, cutting through the heavy air of ozone and grease. Seren was standing there, holding his own dirty, stained electric kettle and her dented, priceless thermal flask. She had found his water recycler. She had brewed her cache. She handed him a steaming cup. This time, it was not the formal, binding ritual of their first encounter. It was a simple, quiet offering. He took it, his gloved hands black with grime, and drank. The warmth spread through him, clearing his head. "It is good leaf water," he mumbled. "It is Kesh," she corrected him softly. "And your water filtration is barely adequate." Adrian almost smiled. "My apologies, Your Highness. I will be sure to upgrade the plumbing right after I finish rebuilding a fusion reactor, and before the local garrison executes me for treason." She looked down, her small attempt at humor failing. "You should not joke about that." "If I do not joke about it, I will have to panic," he said, turning back to the engine. "Panic makes my hands shake, and I need steady hands to hotwire this fusion manifold." The ritual formed, every station morning. She brought tea. They would sit for 10 minutes on a stack of cargo containers, drinking in silence, or talking. Their conversations were clipped, wary. He asked her about her biofighter. She asked him about his tools. She was sharp, impossibly intelligent, and she learned by watching. But she never spoke of who she was, or why the Empire wanted her dead. She was just Seren, the pilot. And he was just Adrian, the mechanic. On the third cycle, as Adrian was welding the last of the scavenged armor plates onto the freighter's bridge, every screen on the Meridian Ring flickered to life at once. It was not a local broadcast. It was an override, a station-wide, system-wide emergency decree. A hologram shimmered into existence over Adrian's console. It was a man, an Aurelian. But where Seren was all refined, fluid grace, this man was carved from granite. His features were sharp, his eyes cold and dark. He wore the severe, high-collared uniform of an imperial Grand Admiral. His presence saturated the room with icy, stark authority, Seren, who was sorting power conduits, froze. She dropped a bundle of wires and staggered back into the shadows of the cargo bay. "Inhabitants of the Meridian Ring," the Admiral's voice boomed. It was a cultured, smooth baritone, cold as the void. "I am Grand Admiral Malachar Keth. Your neutrality is at an end." The hologram zoomed out, showing Malachar on a warship's bridge. It was vast, a city killer, its black hull bristling with weapons. "You have, knowingly or not, harbored a serpent, a traitor to the Star Empire. The fugitive is known as Seren Kalis." Seren let out a sound, a choked gasp. Malachar continued, his gaze sweeping across the millions of unseen viewers. "She is the last of a decadent, corrupt line. In her lust for power, she attempted to assassinate the Imperial High Council and seize control of the throne. She failed, and she fled." His image hardened. "We know she is here. We know she is wounded. The Inquisitors have failed to retrieve her, therefore, I am deploying the Fifth Fleet. As of this moment, this entire sector is under military blockade. We will scan every ship, every bay, every living soul, any being, any species, found to have aided this renegade Empress. Will see their station, their ship, and their homeworld suffer the consequences. This is not a request. This is the new law." The hologram vanished, replaced by a flashing red icon on Adrian's tactical display. A massive Aurelian battlecruiser, the Iron Will, had just warped into orbit, flanked by a dozen destroyers. The blockade was total. Silence filled the bay, broken only by the hum of the freighter's newly activated reactor. Adrian slowly powered down his plasma welder. He turned to Seren, who was pressed against the bulkhead, her body rigid, her hands clenched into fists. "Renegade Empress," Adrian said, his voice dangerously quiet. "He called you Empress, and he said you tried to kill them." "He lies," Seren whispered. It was not a plea, it was a hiss. The bioluminescent patterns on her skin, usually a soft, gentle blue, were pulsing with a new, aggressive crimson light. "Then it is time you told me the truth," Adrian said, crossing his arms. "Not the 'I crashed my ship' story. The real one." Seren looked at him, her violet eyes burning with a cold fire he had not seen before. She was no longer the panicked girl. She was something else. "I am Seren Kalis," she said, her voice low and shaking with controlled fury. "The sole heir to the Aurelian Void Throne. Or I was until he took it." She told him everything. The ceremony of the passing. The celebration, Malachar Keth, her father's most trusted Grand Admiral. The man he called brother. The attack. It was not a battle. It was a purge. Malachar's personal fleet, the Fifth, led by the Iron Will, had turned its primary weapons on the Imperial Palace from orbit. There was no warning, no declaration of war, just fire. "I saw it," she whispered, her gaze distant, fixed on the memory. "The royal spire just melted. My family, my cousins, my honor guard are all gone, incinerated." She had been in the royal hangar, preparing her biofighter for a ceremonial flight. Malachar himself had cornered her there. "He did not come to kill me," she spat, her voice thick with hatred. "He came to claim me. He said the throne needed a legitimate face. His face, with my voice. A puppet." She had refused. She fought. He was too strong. His armored gauntlet had closed around her wing, and he had torn it from her harness. The pain, she said, was blinding. "He left me broken. But my last guard, Kalen, activated the hangar's self-destruct. It created a diversion. It threw Malachar back. I crawled into the fighter. It was damaged, but it launched, I just jumped to the furthest, most chaotic, most lawless place I could think of. Here." She was breathing hard, and the story finished. She looked at Adrian, her royal composure shattering, revealing the terrified, grieving woman beneath. Adrian remained silent for a long moment, processing. It was a story from a Data novel, a grand galactic tragedy, and it had crashed right into his garage. He turned back to the hull of the Opportunity, picked up his welder, and ignited the torch. The plasma flame hiss was the only sound. "A coup," he said, his voice muffled by the sound of the welder. "He murdered the entire royal bloodline, just like that." "He is a monster," she said. "He betrayed everything. The blood debt must be paid. He must answer for what he did." "Revenge is a luxury, kid," Adrian said, his back to her, as he laid a thick, ugly bead of molten metal along a seam. "Right now, I am focused on survival. This armor patch might stop small arms fire. Maybe, if you squint and the light is bad." He did not disbelieve her. The wing, the fleet, Malakar's cold-blooded broadcasted all fit. He believed her. But he refused to get drawn into her quest. He was not a hero. He was not a revolutionary. He was a mechanic, and his only job was to get this ship, and himself, out of the blast radius. "They are starting the deck-by-deck sweep," Adrian announced. 2 hours later. He had been monitoring the Inquisitor's encrypted comms. "Their sweeps are fast. They are 4 levels up. We have maybe 30 minutes before they reach this decommissioned sector." "The blockade," Seren said, her face grim. She was strapped into the co-pilot's chair, her patched wing folded awkwardly behind her. "We will never get past the Iron Will. It is watching every major exit." "Then we do not use a major exit," Adrian said. He strapped himself into the pilot's seat, his hands flying across the newly activated console. The freighter's engines hummed, a deep, unstable thrum. "Hold on." He did not steer the Opportunity toward the main bay doors. He steered it backward. With a deafening roar, he engaged the freighter's main thrusters at 10% power and slammed the ship through the back wall of Bay 36. Metal shrieked and tore. The ship burst through the weakened bulkhead and into the vast, dark, unpressurized superstructure of the Meridian Ring itself. Alarms blared across the entire station. "What are you doing?" Seren yelled, clutching her harness as the ship bucked. "Taking the service entrance," Adrian grunted, his eyes fixed on a small, flickering schematic on his screen. This was the underworld of the ring, a labyrinth of unlit, unmapped maintenance tunnels, massive cooling pipes, zero-G access shafts, and conduits the size of starships. The station's guts, the rat lines. Bay 36, a frantic voice screamed over the Aurelian comms. "The target is in the wall. He is inside the superstructure." "They cannot bring a destroyer in here," Adrian muttered, his knuckles white on the yoke. He was navigating the tight tunnels purely from memory, dodging massive recycler pipes and high-voltage junctions that would fry them instantly. "But they have fighters." As if summoned, 2 small, agile Inquisitor-class interceptors appeared behind them, their engines glowing like angry eyes in the darkness. They opened fire. Pulse energy bolts slammed into the Opportunity's newly welded armor, making the whole ship ring like a gong. "Shields at 80%, Seren called out, her panic gone, replaced by the cool efficiency of a trained pilot. "They are faster than we are, but they are not smarter," Adrian said. An interceptor was right on their tail, lining up a killing shot. "Take the helm. Keep her steady. Straight ahead." "What are you doing?" "Improvising," Adrian yelled, his hands flying across the engine control panel. He was not arming weapons. He was rerouting the main engine coolant externally. Now, he shouted. He hit a button. A massive cloud of superheated, iridescent plasma coolant vented from the Opportunity's portside exhaust. The interceptor flew straight into it. The pilot screamed as the gaseous plasma instantly blinded his sensors and began to melt his forward armor. Blind and crippled, the fighter slammed into a colossal bulkhead and exploded. The Aurelian comms dissolved into chaos. He is venting plasma. He is venting plasma inside the superstructure. He is destabilizing the ring's core. The second fighter broke off, intimidated. They are rigid, Adrian said to Seren. A small, grim smile on his face. A flash of his old self, the self he kept buried, had surfaced. They follow the rules of engagement. They expect a ship to fight like a ship. They never, ever expect you to turn the station itself into a weapon. The exit, Seren pointed. Ahead, Adrian could see it, a cluster of stars. The old cargo gate, he confirmed. Sector Gamma. Sector. Decommissioned after the Pluvorian plague outbreak 30 years ago. It is unshielded and unmonitored. It faces away from the blockade. The Opportunity burst out of the superstructure, showering debris, and emerged into the cold, clean dark of open space. Freedom. It lasted for 4 seconds. "He is out!" a voice screamed on the comms. The Iron Will, Malakar's flagship, was already turning. It was slow, a beast of unimaginable size, but its weapons were locking on. "They have a firing solution," Seren shouted. "Our FTL drive is not charged." "It is not a standard FTL drive," Adrian said, his hands a blur as he punched in a string of coordinates. "It is an experimental human jump drive. Stolen." "Of course. It does not need a clean vector to spool up. It just needs a vector." "Their tactical coordination," Seren murmured, watching the enemy fleet move on their tactical display. "They are cutting off all escape lanes. It is a perfect cinder halo formation. My father told me only one person was ever able to break that formation. A human." Adrian's hands kept moving, but his focus was absolute. "They called him the Shadow Architect," Seren continued, her voice filled with a strange, academic awe. "The man who designed the Empire's entire war network and then, for his own reasons, designed the strategies to defeat it. My father respected him. He feared him. I think." Adrian's fingers paused on the console. Just for a microsecond. He did not look at her. "That is a ghost story, Empress," he said, his voice rough. "Is it?" she asked, meeting his gaze. The ship's proximity alarm screamed. A volley of torpedoes had been launched. They were inbound. "Strap in," Adrian snarled, his brief pause broken. He slammed his hand on the jump drive activator. "This is going to be rough." He did not jump off the torpedoes. He did not jump off the Iron Will. He jumped toward it. The Opportunity vanished in a blink of distorted light. On the bridge of the Iron Will, Grand Admiral Malakar Keth watched his tactical display. The torpedoes hit empty space. "Where is he?" Malakar demanded, his voice calm. A frantic tech replied, "Sir, he is gone. No signature." "Wait. He jumped inside our shield perimeter." "No, that is impossible." The Opportunity reappeared, 20,000 kilometers away, on the far side of the flagship. It was a maneuver of such profound, suicidal insanity that no Aurelian tactical computer would have ever predicted it. Adrian had used the massive, gravity-bending signature of Malakar's own flagship as a slingshot point for his unstable drive. A move that should have torn his unshielded freighter into atoms, before the fleet's gunners could even retarget. Adrian hit the drive a second time. The stars outside the viewport stretched, twisted into agonizing streaks of light, and then vanished. The ship shuddered so violently that Seren was thrown against her harness, the patched wing sparking in protest. Then, with a sickening lurch, they dropped back into real space. "Status," Adrian gasped, fighting the helm as the ship groaned in protest. "We are here," Seren breathed, looking at the main view screen. "But where is here?" Adrian leaned back, his whole body trembling from the strain. He looked out the window. The void was not black. It was a deep, angry crimson. The space around them was thick with debris, the wreckage of ancient, colossal warships, some kilometers long. It was a graveyard. The stars were swirling, unstable nebulae that looked like bleeding wounds in the fabric of space. "The Scarlet Drift," Adrian said, his voice heavy and tired. "An old, old battlefield. The weapons used here permanently scarred this region. The residual distortion scrambles all long-range sensors. The Empire's signals cannot get a clean lock in here. We are safe." Seren stared at the vista of silent, drifting destruction. "You knew about this place." It was not a question. Adrian Cole stared out at the crimson void, at the ghosts of ships he had only ever seen in after-action reports and tactical simulations. "Yes," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I knew this place. We are safe for a few days. Then we need to move." He turned away from the window and from her questioning gaze, his past settling around him like a shroud. The opportunity drifted through a graveyard. The Scarlet Drift was not a place. It was a wound. Decades ago, a cataclysmic battle between the Aurelian Empire and the Old Terran alliances had detonated an experimental weapon here. The blast had torn a hole in subspace, and the resulting radiation had stained the entire nebula a permanent, sickly crimson. It was a region of ghosts. The husks of colossal dreadnoughts, some 5 kilometers long, tumbled in a slow, silent ballet of destruction. Their metal hulls were crystallized, fractured by the energies that still pulsed through the sector. The drift was silent, empty, and, most importantly, impenetrable. The swirling crimson clouds of ionized particles and subspace distortions made long-range sensors blind, and FTL communication impossible. Seren stared at the view screen, her bronze skin reflecting the red light. "I have read about this. The Battle of the Crimson Veil. They said nothing survived." "They were wrong," Adrian said. He navigated the ship with a slow, careful hand, guiding it toward the wreckage of a massive, ring-shaped station. "Life finds a way, especially life that does not want to be found." The opportunity was wounded. The double jump had cracked 2 of the main reactor's containment shields, and the human-patched systems were complaining loudly. They needed parts, fuel, and information. Adrian steered the ship into a gaping cargo bay in the derelict station. The bay was dark, but as they crossed the threshold, docking clamps emerged from the floor and seized the ship with practiced ease. A moment later, the bay doors groaned shut, and the hollow ring began to pressurize. "Where are we?" Seren asked, unstrapping herself. Her patched wing gave an angry little sputter in protest. "Crossroads Station," Adrian said, shutting the engine. "It is a private port. The owner trades in salvage, information, and discretion. We are safe here. Stay close, and let me do the talking." They exited the ship into a vast, cavernous space lit by flickering, salvaged lights. The air smelled of stale, recycled air, mildew, and welding torch ozone. It was a haven for the lost, populated by figures in heavy cloaks and environmental suits. A man was waiting for them at the foot of the ramp. He was old, human, with a thick gray beard and skin like cured leather. He wore a patched-up exosuit and a grin that revealed 2 gold-plated teeth. "Well, Well, the man's voice rasped, amplified by his suit's speaker. If it is not the ghost, I knew that jump signature. Only one man in the galaxy is that crazy, or that stupid. Adrian Cole. Hello, Jonas, Adrian said, his voice flat. It has been a long time. Jonas Pike cackled, a sound like rocks in a tumbler. Not long enough, apparently. I heard you went respectable, fixing engines on the Meridian Ring. A long fall from designing other things. I need repairs, Adrian cut him, his eyes scanning the bay. Quietly. And I need a favor. Repairs are credits, Jonas said, his smile fading. He looked past Adrian, his eyes landing on Seren. He noted her bearing, the metallic sheen of her skin, the unnatural grace. Then his eyes settled on the patched-together wing. But favors involve cargo, and your cargo looks expensive and hot. She is a passenger, Adrian said. She needs medical attention for the wing, and we need intel on the Aurelian blockade. Jonas stroked his beard. The entire quadrant is screaming about a runaway empress, and you, Adrian, show up with a high-blood Aurelian woman wearing a half-assed human-tech wing. You always did have a taste for catastrophic complications. He sighed. Fine, but you owe me. Big, take her to Rhea, Bay 12, and try not to let her bleed on anything valuable. Rhea hates that. Bay 12 was a med bay, but it looked more like a charnel house for machines. Limbs robotic, organic, and hybrid hung from hooks on the ceiling. A xylosion, all sharp angles and 6 multi-jointed limbs, was arguing with a Kathir mercenary who seemed to be missing his head. The argument was being refereed by a woman with pale blue skin, sharp, feline features, and eyes that glowed with a faint, clinical light. She wore a stained medical coat and looked profoundly annoyed with the universe. No! You 8-legged imbecile! She hissed at the xylosion. I cannot reattach your primary manipulator and give you a discount. Pick one. Either you pay full price, or you learn to count to 5 on one hand. Dr. Rhea Talik, Adrian asked. Rhea turned, her glowing eyes narrowing. What is it? I am busy practicing medicine on creatures who think a diagnostic scan is a negotiation. Who are you? Jonas sent us. This is Seren. She needs this looked at. Adrian gestured to Seren's wing. Rhea's eyes raked over Seren, lingering on the wing. She walked over, poked the patched-on cargo lifter battery with one long blue finger. The wing sputtered. My word, Rhea said, her voice dripping with sarcastic horror. What did you do? Did you threaten it into working? This is not engineering. This is an insult. This is what happens when a mechanic with a welding torch and too much confidence tries to play God. It works, Adrian said defensively. It works incidentally, Rhea snapped. It is a tectonic plate shift waiting to happen. It is pumping so much raw, unfiltered power into her neural interface that I am surprised it has not already given her an aneurysm. Get her on the table. Now. For the next hour, Rhea worked, her initial disgust slowly turning into a grudging curiosity. She replaced Adrian's crude splices with finer, more stable biolinks, but she kept his core bypass. It is still a monstrosity, she declared, stepping back. But it is a stable monstrosity. It might even last a week. Your mechanic friend is a savage, Your Highness. But he is a creative one. Seren flexed the wing. The dangerous hum was gone, replaced by a steady, solid thrum. Thank you, Doctor. Do not thank me. Pay me, Rhea said. Jonas is putting it on your ghost friend's taboo tab, which means I will probably never see a credit. In the corner of the medbay, a device flickered. It was a floating orb, a damaged sphere of black metal and cracked lenses, trailing severed cables. It looked like a derelict military drone. It suddenly spoke, its voice a synthesized, glitching monotone. Aurelian Royal-Grade Biowing, signature patched, compromised. Query: is the subject a prisoner? Threat analysis low. What is that? Saren asked, startled. That, Rhea said, not looking up from cleaning her tools, is Echo. It is a found object, some kind of Aurelian tactical AI. It is cracked, half mad. It just sits there, spouting tactical garbage and battlefield reports from wars that ended 10 years ago. I use its core to help run my diagnostic scanners. It is mostly harmless. Echo drifted closer to Saren. Its lens glowed. Subject identified. Kalis. Saren Kalis. Status fugitive. Status Empress. Priority 1. Saren and Adrian froze. How? Saren whispered. Cached data, Echo replied. I am part of the Aurelian warnet. I still listen. The blockade chatter is loud. Can you access external networks from here? Adrian asked, his voice suddenly sharp. The drift is noisy, Echo glitched. But information leaks, data ghosts. Malakar Keth. He speaks. He is proud. He has partners. Partners. Saren stepped forward. What partners? Not Aurelian. The signatures are different. Financial, UHEC. United Human Economic Council. Echo projected a flickering, corrupted file onto the wall. It was a shipping manifest. Refined heavy elements, weapon-grade isotopes, shipped from a UHEC-controlled asteroid to the Iron Will. The date stamp was 3 days before the coup. Saren stared at the manifest, her blood turning to ice. Your people, she whispered, turning to Adrian. Her voice was not sad. It was cold, colder than Malakar's. My family was murdered and your people paid for the fuel. The UHEC is not my people, Adrian said, his fists clenching. They are a corporation, aren't they? They are parasites. They have no flag, no loyalty. They follow credits, not people. They are human, Saren shot back, the crimson light flaring in her bioluminescent patterns. Just like the shadow architect who built the very warnet that killed my family. Your species you build, you destroy, and you profit from the chaos in between. The air in the medbay was thick with tension. Rhea Talik watched them, her feline eyes missing nothing. My species has nothing to do with this, Adrian said, his voice low. Does it not? Saren challenged. You knew how to bypass the ring's Aurelian systems. You knew how to perform an impossible jump. You knew about this place. And you built that. She pointed at the patched wing. You think like they do. Before Adrian could answer, Jonas Pike's voice crackled over the intercom. Cole, get to the command deck. You and your high blood, you need to see this. Jonas's command deck was a nest of scavenged, mismatched screens, all showing different feeds. Most were static, distorted by the drift, but one was showing a tactical map, relayed from a deep space probe. Malakar is not just sitting on the Meridian Ring, Jonas said, pointing to the screen. He is consolidating. But he did not get the prize, not all of it. What prize? Saren asked. Your family's flagship, the Aurelian Crown, Jonas said. He slagged it from orbit, Chiu, but he did not destroy the memory core. He wanted it. It contains the full logs of the attack, the orders and the proof. But his strike team was sloppy. The flagship's emergency reactors blew, and the explosion went well. Jonas changed the display, showing a navigational chart, a blinking red dot. It pushed the wreck, pushed it clear out of orbit, right into the Ashen Veil. The Veil, Rhea Talik, who had followed them, let out a low hiss. You were joking. No one goes to the Veil. It is a toxic gas nebula, full of plasma storms and things. It is a death sentence. Seren stared at the red dot. The logs. The proof. That is right, Your Highness. Jonas grinned. Malachar wants it. The U-Heck wants it. Whoever gets that black box can write the history of this war. And right now, it is just sitting there. Seren turned to Adrian. Her eyes were burning, but the cold fury was focused. The personal betrayal she felt from humanity was second to the need for justice. "We are going," she said. It was not a request. "It is suicide," Rhea said. "The gas is corrosive. Plasma storms will fry your systems. And that is before you get to the phantoms." "Phantoms?" Adrian asked. "Energy creatures," Jonas supplied. His grin gone. "Things that live in the plasma. They are drawn to active reactors. They will tear that garbage scow of yours apart like tissue paper." "Echo," Adrian said, turning to the floating AI that had silently followed them. "Install yourself into the Opportunities navigation system. I need your sensor analysis." "Acknowledged," Echo buzzed. "Probability of survival 4%. "I will take those odds," Seren said. "You are all insane," Rhea muttered. "Which is precisely why I am coming." "You—" Adrian raised an eyebrow. "That ship is a medical disaster," Rhea said, crossing her arms. "The radiation from the veil will give you all tumors, and your patched-up tech will fail. I am coming to observe, and to collect the medical data when you all die in interesting, novel ways." "Great," Adrian said dryly. "The gang is all here." The Ashen Veil lived up to its name. It was a churning, opaque cloud of sickly, yellow-gray gas. The Opportunity plunged into it, and the universe vanished, replaced by an oppressive, suffocating fog. "Hull integrity at 98%, Echo's voice reported, now integrated into the ship's comms. "External corrosion beginning. The acidic content is high." "Just keep us moving," Adrian said, his eyes glued to the proximity sensors. They were flying blind. "The air is thick," Seren murmured from the co-pilot seat. She was right. The ship groaned, as if it were moving through water, not gas. Then the first storm hit. It was not thunder and lightning. It was a wave of pure plasma washing over the ship, bathing them in a blinding white light. "Shields, down to 60%, Rhea yelled from the back, where she was monitoring the life support systems. "Energy surge detected. It is shortening." "Oh, hell." The lights on the bridge died, plunging them into darkness, lit only by the red emergency strobes. "We have lost our main power," Seren shouted. "We are dead." "We are not dead." Adrian's voice came out of the darkness, calm and steady. "We are just rebooting. Echo reroute auxiliary power. From the life support scrubbers to the impulse engine. Minimal thrust." "Warning," Echo buzzed. "That will raise carbon dioxide levels by 15%. Sustained exposure will be lethal." "We do not need to sustain it," Adrian said. "We just need a kick." The engines sputtered, then caught. The main console flickered back to life, though the ship's primary systems were still offline. "There," Adrian said, his knuckles white. "Incoming," Seren whispered, pointing at the view screen. They had drifted into a clear pocket within the gas, and it was not empty. They were surrounded by creatures of shimmering blue-white light. They had no solid form, just vague, undulating shapes, like manta rays woven from lightning. They were beautiful, and they were closing in. The phantoms. "They are drawn to the reactor," Echo stated. "Energy signatures, specifically the engine pulse." "Can we fight them?" Seren asked. "With what?" Rhea yelled. Our weapons are offline. We are a tin can in a bath of acid. One of the creatures, larger than the others, drifted close. It touched the hull. A spiderweb of electrical energy seared the metal, and the ship screamed. Hull breach. Deck 4. Echo reported. Ceiling. Adrian was not listening. He was staring at the creatures, at the rhythmic, pulsing glow of their forms. It was not random. It was a pattern. A frequency. Echo, he said, his voice low. Analyze the pulse frequency of those creatures. Match it. Match it, Echo queried. With what? The shields. Stop trying to block them. Change our shield modulation. Make it resonate at the exact same frequency as their energy pulse. Do it now. That is, Echo paused. That is illogical. It would be like singing along with a bullet that is about to kill you. Just do it, Adrian roared. This is stupid, Rhea muttered, bracing herself for impact. Echo complied. The ship's failing shields, which had been a solid humming barrier, began to flicker. The hum changed, deepening into a low, rhythmic throb that matched the pulse of the phantoms. The largest creature, which had been rearing back for another strike, paused. It drifted closer. It nudged the shield. This time, there was no electrical arc. Its energy seemed to pass through, harmonics matching. It hovered for a moment. Then, seemingly convinced the ship was just another, very large, very ugly phantom, it turned and drifted away. The entire swarm followed, pulsing in time with the ship's new, resonant shields. Rhea Talik stared at the sensor display. I do not believe it. You made us invisible by being louder. I did not make us louder, Adrian said, wiping a sheen of sweat from his face. I just changed the tune. It is an old fixer's trick. If you cannot stop the rattle, make the whole engine rattle in time with it. It works on fusion drives. Apparently, it works on plasma ghosts too. Serenja stared at him, her suspicion warring with a new, grudging awe. Ahead, a shadow loomed out of the yellow fog, a mountain of black metal, cracked and broken. The Aurelian Crown, Echo announced. We have arrived. The flagship was a tomb. It was floating dead, its hull breached in 1,000 places. They docked the Opportunity in a fighter bay, the metal groaning under their magnetic clamps. They moved in zero-G, their helmet lamps cutting feeble cones of light through the freezing, debris-filled corridors. Bodies of the Royal Honor Guard floated in the darkness, their formal armor shattered, their faces frozen in the vacuum. Seren moved like a ghost, her face pale behind her helmet's visor. This had been her home. These had been her people. Adrian put a hand on her shoulder, a brief, steadying gesture. She did not shrug it off. The bridge is this way, she whispered, her voice cracking over the comms. The ship was not dead. As they passed a major junction, a row of hidden panels slid open. Red optical sensors flared to life. Sanitization drones, Echo's voice crackled in their ears. Automated defense grid, active. A dozen sleek, black drones, armed with pulse cutters, dropped from the ceiling and advanced, their weapons charging. Back, Adrian yelled, pushing Seren and Rhea behind a bulkhead. Pulse fire stitched the metal where they had been standing. We are trapped, Rhea shouted. There is no way past them. Warden protocol. Echo's voice was tight with something. Fear active. This is a high-level military defense. We cannot bypass it. The AI's voice glitched. Designate Shadow Architect, Seren, Rhea, and Adrian were pinned down. The drones were advancing, methodically hurting them. Seren, Adrian said, his voice deadly calm. Cover me. For exactly 3 seconds. With what? She yelled. Just distract them. Seren emerged from behind cover. Her patched wing flared to life. A sudden, brilliant flash of hybrid light. For the throne! She screamed, firing her sidearm, a small pulse pistol at the lead drone. The shot bounced harmlessly off its armor, but the drones all swiveled, retargeting her as the primary threat. In those 3 seconds, Adrian did not run. He launched himself across the corridor to a secondary maintenance terminal, one that was dark and non-functional. He slammed his fist into the panel, cracking it open, and ripped out a data port. He jammed his personal Omni tool into the raw interface. The drones stopped. They literally froze, mid-stride, their red eyes fixed on Seren. "What did you do?" Rhea whispered. Peeking out, Adrian was slumped against the terminal, his helmet visor hiding his expression. On his Omni tool's screen, a line of text flashed in archaic Aurelian military code. Accessing Warden Protocol authentication required override. Code welcome. Architect, drone protocol stand down. How? Seren whispered, lowering her pistol. How did you do that? Adrian pulled his tool from the port and pushed himself off the wall, floating toward the bridge. I found the off switch. Let us get the logs. The bridge was a scene of utter devastation. The main view screen was a shattered crystalline spiderweb. The Void Throne, the seat of the Emperor, was melted slag, but the central memory core, a pillar of black, humming crystal, was intact, protected by an emergency blast shield. Seren averted her gaze from the throne. Echo! Get it! Echo's floating orb avatar emerged from Adrian's pack and interfaced with the core. Data began to stream, fast and silent. Downloading, the AI announced. Final command logs, bridge audio, visual. A moment later, the bridge's damaged auxiliary screens flickered to life. They saw Malakar's face, cold and impassive, on the main tactical screen. His voice filled their helmets. The last words the Emperor ever heard. Execute protocol, Cinder. All royal marked vessels. All palace locations. No survivors. The authorization code flashed beneath his image. It was his. We have it, Seren breathed, her hands clenched. Then, a second file played, audio only, encrypted. Echo's light flashed as it broke the code in real time. It was Malakar's voice, time-stamped just 1 hour before the attack. The Council confirms payment upon visual confirmation, a different voice said. The accent was clean, sharp, Terran standard, humans. The Aurelian resources are now open. Good hunting, Admiral. Malakar's reply was simple. It is done. Seren closed her eyes. The proof was absolute. Download is complete, Echo said. But the AI did not move. Its light was flickering erratically. Echo, Adrian asked. What is it? Cross-referencing. The AI's voice was strained, fragmented. Protocol Cinder, the attack plan, the fleet formation, the Cinder halo, a perfect concentric tactical containment designed to ensure zero escape. I have seen this logic before. Echo's orb swiveled, its cracked lens focusing entirely on Adrian. The jump slingshot, the coolant vent trap, the shield frequency modulation, the logic is identical. The thought pattern is yours. Seren turned, floating in the 0G to face Adrian. Adrian. He did not just use the Warden protocol, Echo whispered. A fragment of a corrupted file surfacing from its damaged memory. He wrote it. The architect of the slaughterhouse. Adrian Cole floated in the silence of the tomb he had helped design. He looked at Seren's pale, horrified face. He had no words. He could not deny it. The trip back to Crossroads Station was silent, Seren sat in the co-pilot's chair, staring at the crimson clouds, her back to him. Rhea was in the medbay, pointedly calibrating her equipment. Even Echo was quiet. Its orb avatar retracted into the ship's console. Adrian was alone, piloting the ship, surrounded by the weight of his own past. When they docked, Jonas was waiting. "You got it, did you not? I can tell by the 'we just robbed a grave' look on your faces." Seren walked past him, her expression a mask of ice. "So," Rhea said, stretching as she disembarked. "You have the proof. You can expose Malachar. You can expose the human corporations. What now? Are you going to post it on the Galactic News Network from here? Good luck." Seren stopped. She turned. The grief was gone. The shock was gone. All that was left was resolve, cold and hard as the void. "No," she said. "Not from here. We will not hide in the shadows anymore." She looked directly at Adrian, her gaze unwavering, challenging. "We are going to the capital. We are going to Heliora. The Festival of the Center is in 1 week. The entire galaxy will be watching. Broadcast on every channel. We will show them. We will show them all." Jonas Pike whistled, low and long. "Heliora. The heart of the Empire. That is not a mission, Your Highness. That is a suicide note." Seren did not waver. "It is the only way." Adrian met her gaze. He saw the accusation in her eyes. He saw her pain, her rage at him, at his species, at the universe. And he saw that she was right. He had designed the Cinder Halo. He had built the drones. His mind had created the tools that Malachar had used to butcher her family. He had started this. 20 years ago. He had started this. He turned to the Opportunities console and pulled up a new set of files. Schematics, blueprints, infiltration routes. "She is right," Adrian said, his voice quiet, the mechanic fading, the architect fully present. "We go to Heliora, Jonas. I need fuel, all of it, and I need something specific. I need a C-13 plasma inverter." Jonas's eyes went wide. "A C-13. Those are military grade. They are illegal." "I know," Adrian said, his fingers already flying across the console, plotting a course. "That is why I know you have one." Heliora was a jewel. It hung in the velvet dark, not a planet of rock and water, but a construct of light, crystal, and gravity-defying architecture. Massive, graceful sky arches, made of solid energy, connected floating continents of polished white stone. Towers of spun crystal, kilometers high, sang in the solar winds. It was the capital of the Aurelian Empire, the center of the galaxy. And it was breathtaking. The Opportunity, by contrast, was a flying garbage can. Adrian kept the ship powered down, running on a single, near-dead thruster, hiding in the shadow of a colossal orbital mirror. They had spent 3 days making microjumps, slipping through the sensor net during high-traffic commercial windows, using Jonas's stolen and highly illegal smuggler's credentials. "We look," Rhea Talek observed, sipping recycled water from a bulb, "like a rodent attempting to infiltrate a feast for gods. A rodent that is on fire." "That is the point," Adrian said, his eyes scanning the orbital traffic. "They are looking for a warship. They are looking for a renegade empress. They are not looking for a sanitation-class freighter with a faulty power core and fake credentials." Below them, Heliora was in a state of ecstatic celebration. The Festival of the Center. It was a week-long holiday celebrating the Empire's founding. Every screen, every building, every ship in orbit was tuned to the official Imperial broadcast. It was, as Seren had promised, the largest single audience in the galaxy. "Jonas," Adrian said into the comms, "you and Echo are on data transport. You have the logs. You find the rendezvous. You stay dark. and you wait for my signal." "Copy that, Architect." Jonas's voice crackled back from the cargo hold, where he was nestled with Echo in a shielded smuggling compartment. "Just try not to get us all vaporized before the main event. Rhea, your credentials as Dr. Talek are active. You are a visiting xenobiologist attending the medical conference on the Lyra continent. Your transport leaves in 10 minutes. And what about you two?" Rhea asked, nodding toward Seren. Seren was no longer an empress. She was dressed in the severe, high-collared silks of a minor Aurelian noble from a remote mining moon. Her bioluminescent patterns were masked by a chemical suppressant, and her patched, hybridized wing was folded tight beneath a heavy, formal cloak. She looked stiff, angry, and out of place. Adrian said, checking his own credentials, a low-level, human contractor technician assigned to waste heat management, are going to take the service entrance. Heliora's splendor was a facade, a thin veneer of crystal and light, and like every great city ever built, it ran on a foundation of filth, heat, and raw power. This was the world Adrian had designed. While the nobility and citizens rode transports of light across the sky arches, Adrian and Seren were riding a rattling 400-year-old maintenance lift down into the planet's core. The air grew thick and hot, smelling of ozone and superheated metal. "This is not a palace," Seren whispered, her voice tight, clutching the rail as the lift plunged into darkness. "This is a furnace." "It is an engine," Adrian replied, his voice calm. He was home. Heliora's beauty is powered by a dozen artificial suns held in magnetic containment deep below the surface. All that energy has to be moved. All that waste heat has to be vented. The lift stopped with a jarring clang. They were in a tunnel, easily 50 meters wide, lined with massive insulated pipes. The scale was inhuman. "You built this," Seren stated. It was not a question. "I built the systems that run it," Adrian corrected, his voice echoing in the vast space. He shone his light on a complex junction of conduits. The energy grid, the traffic control, the life support, the waste heat routing. The Aurelians designed the towers, the art. I designed the guts, and I built them with back doors. He led her through the maze. They were not hacking, they were walking. He opened junction boxes that had not been touched in 20 years, his fingers finding the manual override switches. He diverted power, silenced alarms, and opened bulkheads with codes that had been purged from the main system but left in the physical hardware. "Why?" Seren asked, as he bypassed a high-level security door by simply rewiring 2 primary connectors. "Why build a flawed system?" "I did not build it flawed," Adrian said, not looking back. "I built it human. Your Aurelian engineering is flawless, rigid and brittle. It does not account for failure. If one part breaks, the whole system locks. Human engineering expects failure. We build in redundancies. We build in workarounds. We use, let's call it, creative engineering. We know that sometimes you just need to kick the machine to make it work." "You built a city that relies on being kicked," Seren murmured, a faint, almost horrified amusement in her voice. "I built a city that could be fixed," he replied. "Now, this way." They climbed a forgotten maintenance ladder, emerging into a small, pressurized chamber. It was a service hub, cold and silent. "Jonas, Rhea, we are in position," Adrian whispered into his comm. "Status." "At the rendezvous," Jonas's voice came back. "Echo is getting anxious. He says the security protocols on this network are flimsy." "They are not flimsy," Adrian muttered. "They just prioritize aesthetics over function. Classic Aurelian." "Rhea." "I am in." Rhea's voice was tight. "At the medical station near the main plaza. The one you pointed out. I have requisitioned a trauma kit. I am surrounded by fools in robes. It is insufferable. Get this over with. We are moving. Adrian opened one final panel. Beyond it was the deafening sound of music, cheers, and wind. They stepped out onto a narrow service balcony, thousands of meters above the planet's surface. They were at the base of the Echo Tower. It was a single, impossibly slender spire of glowing crystal, piercing the sky. It was the broadcast hub, the literal and metaphorical center of the festival. Beams of data, visible as pulses of light, were streaming from its apex to the orbital relays, carrying the festival to 100 billion screens. Security is heavy, Seren noted, pointing to the elite, crimson-armored Imperial guards at the main entrance. They are watching the doors, Adrian said. We are not using the doors. He led her to a waste heat vent. He keyed in one last ancient code. The massive slats of the vent hissed open, revealing a dark shaft. This will take us to the core. Stay low. They crawled into the heart of the machine. The Echo Tower's core was a colossal, vibrating column of energy. Data, sound, and light converged here. It was the Empire's throat. Jonas, Adrian said, his voice tense. He pulled Echo's orb avatar from his pack. The AI was still integrated with the Opportunities systems, but this was its remote unit. We are in. Echo, you are on. I am plugging you into the main broadcast core. Once you are in, find Jonas's data packet and stream it. Override everything. Acknowledged. Echo's synthesized voice buzzed. This is a very poor firewall. It is based on trust. How primitive. Adrian jammed the AI's interface into the core's primary data port. I am in, Echo announced. Bypassing protocols, locating data packet from Jonas's signature. Found. I am alive. On a small monitor in the service hub, Adrian saw the feed, the galaxy-wide broadcast of the festival. A colorful parade of floating ships flickered. It went black. Then, the footage from the Aurelian Crown's Bridge appeared. It was grainy, stark, terrifying. Malakar's face, cold and composed. His voice, giving the order, execute Protocol Cinder, no survivors. The galaxy was in stunned silence. It is working, Seren breathed, her hands clenched. He is finished. Now the audio, Adrian ordered. The USHEC file. The screen flickered again. The audio file played. The crisp, Terran standard accent. The Council confirms payment upon visual confirmation. The Aurelian resources are now open. Good hunting, Admiral. It is done, Malakar's voice replied. Seren closed her eyes, a single tear of vindication tracing a path on her bronze cheek. They see. They all see. Wait, Echo said. The AI's light was flashing. I am detecting a secondary signal, a subcarrier. I am not in control. What? Adrian snapped. What do you mean? The data is not being blocked, Echo said, its voice frantic. It is being rerouted. Someone is appending my signal. They are adding new files. I cannot stop it. On the monitor, the footage changed again. The UHAC audio replayed, but this time it was amplified. New files appeared falsified, bank transfers, doctored footage of human ships moving into Aurelian space, schematics of Terran weapons. And then, a new face appeared on the broadcast. It was Malakar. He was not in his flagship. He was in an Imperial briefing room, looking grave, composed. My citizens, he said, his voice smooth and filled with righteous sorrow. For weeks, we have been tracking a deep, insidious threat, a conspiracy from beyond our borders. What is this? Seren grabbed Adrian's arm. No, stop, Echo. Cut the feed. I cannot, Echo shrieked. They have locked me in, Malachar continued, his gaze steady, paternal. The data you have just seen, which my loyalists intercepted from the traitors, is only part of the truth. It confirms our darkest fears. The United Human Economic Council, the shadow architects of their species, orchestrated this entire tragedy. He is twisting it, Adrian whispered, his blood turning to ice. The late Emperor, Malachar said, his voice, heavy with false grief, was deceived. He trusted these humans, and they, in their greed, sought to shatter our empire, using me as their unwilling pawn. They forced my hand, attempting to frame me for their own horrific crimes. On the screen, a new image appeared. A security feed, grainy, dark but unmistakable. It was the service hub of the Echo Tower. It was them. We have this moment, Malachar announced, capturing the human agent responsible for this terrorist broadcast, the human advisor to the renegade Empress, Saren Kalis, who herself has been a puppet of these human corporate interests. It was a trap, Adrian said, ripping Echo's orb from the port. He wanted us to broadcast. He let us in. The door to the service hub exploded inward. Crimson-armored inquisitors poured in, their weapons raised. Move, Adrian roared. He shoved Saren back toward the heat vent. Back to the balcony now. They burst onto the narrow platform, the open sky of Heliora screaming around them. The celebratory music was gone, replaced by the howling of system-wide alarms. They are everywhere, Saren shouted. Below them, on the sky arches, troop transports were landing in the air. Interceptors were swarming toward the tower. They cut off the lift. Adrian saw the main shaft was sealed. This way, the bridge. He fired his sidearm at the magnetic lock of a service gantry, and the small platform extended, connecting to one of the massive, broad, glowing sky arches that spanned the continents. They ran. They were completely exposed. 1,000 meters of open, glowing roadway, with nothing but open air for kilometers below. We are not going to make it, Saren yelled, as pulse fire stitched the ground behind them. Jonas Rhea abort, Adrian shouted into his comm. Get out, get to the ship, abort the rendezvous. Adrian, what is happening? Rhea's voice was frantic. The entire city just went on high alert. They are calling humanity the Void Enemy. It was a setup, Adrian grunted, pulling Saren behind a decorative pillar. He used us to declare war on my entire species. Get out. The comm hissed with static, then died. The Empire was jamming everything. A black, sleek Aurelian air skiff, loaded with Inquisitors, descended from above, blocking their path. Saren looked at Adrian, her eyes wild. She looked at the skiff. Then she looked down. Miles of empty air. He will not take us, she said. Not today, Adrian agreed. Before the Inquisitors could open fire, Saren threw off her heavy cloak, the patched hybrid wing, now powered by Jonas's illegal C-13 plasma inverter, burst to life. It was not the elegant blue of its twin. It was a violent, flickering, unstable white flame, roaring with raw, human-built power. Hold on, she screamed. She grabbed Adrian around the waist, ignited the wing, and jumped off the bridge. The sudden thrust was brutal. They did not fly. They fell with force. The patched wings screamed in protest, a sound of tearing metal and organic pain, as it tried to slow the descent of two people. It cannot hold us both, Adrian yelled over the wind. It does not have to. Saren snarled. She was aiming for a lower-level bridge, a smaller residential arch 400 meters below. They were a comet of bronze and fire. Interceptors swerved to follow them, their cannons blazing. Seren was magnificent. She was no longer a pilot. She was a warrior. She spun them in midair, using her body and the wings single, powerful thrust to dodge pulse fire. She used Adrian's sidearm, firing back at their pursuers with lethal, one-handed accuracy. She was an empress, but the wing was dying. Adrian could see the scavenged human parts glowing cherry red, overheating, melting under the strain of the military-grade inverter. "It is overloading," he shouted. "I see it." She tried to level out, to bleed off speed for a landing on the residential bridge. That was when the Opportunity's patched-together systems finally gave out. With a sound like a gunshot, the main capacitor on the wing exploded. The white flame died, replaced by a plume of black smoke and sparks. The thrust was gone. They were dead in the air. Gravity seized them. They began to fall. Seren screamed, clutching the dead wing, clawing at the empty air. Below them was 9,000 meters of nothing, and then the core engines of the planet. They were falling, past the crystalline towers, past the soaring arches. Adrian looked at her. He saw the terror in her eyes, the same terror she had shown in his bay, clutching a dented teapot. He had no time to think. He only had time to act, a human choice. He was falling beside her. He kicked off the wall of a passing tower. A desperate, impossible maneuver, changing his trajectory. He lunged across the empty space between them. She was just out of reach. He lunged again, unclipped the heavy power pack from his own belt, and threw it, using the meager recoil to propel himself the last few inches. His fingers brushed her hand. Missed. He lunged a final time. A desperate, primal roar torn from his throat. His hand closed around her wrist. He caught her. They were tumbling, end over end. The wind shrieked. He held her hand in a death grip. He looked down. The residential bridge was rushing up at them, impossibly fast. "Brace!" he roared. They hit the bridge. The impact was not a landing. It was a crash. They slammed into the solid light surface, skidding for 50 meters, shedding metal, crystal, and sparks. Adrian felt 3 ribs crack, and his arm screamed as if it had been torn from its socket. But he did not let go. They stopped in a smoking, broken heap. He was alive. She was alive. "My wing," Seren gasped, trying to sit up. The patched construct was a ruin. The explosion had shattered the crystal, and the human components were a melted, fused slag. It was useless. "They are here," Adrian wheezed, pushing himself to his feet. At both ends of the bridge, Inquisitor squads were landing, their black armor a stark contrast to the elegant white arch. They were trapped. "We fight," Seren said, trying to stand, but her legs buckled. "No," Adrian said. He looked at her. He looked at the ruined wing he had built. He had saved her, but he had failed her. His tech had failed. His plan had failed. His species was now the galaxy's monster. He looked at the advancing squads, and he saw one last human work around. He shoved Seren toward a small, transparent tube near the edge of the bridge, a civilian transport pod station. "Get in," he ordered. "What, no? I will not leave you." "It is not a request, Your Highness," he snarled, dragging her to the door. "You wanted to save your people. Go. Save them. I will buy you time." "Adrian." "No." He threw her into the pod, slammed his fist on the activation panel, and keyed in a destination, the medical district. Ria's location. "I cannot because the system is in lockdown," Seren yelled from inside the pod. Adrian jammed his Omni-tool into the pod's control port. "The city grid is locked," he said, his fingers flying, overriding safeties. "But the localized pod system is still running on the old code. My code." The pod door hissed shut, trapping her inside. She pounded on the glass, her face a mask of fury and despair. "Adrian!" He ignored her. He turned to face the advancing Inquisitors. They were 100 meters away. He still had his Omni tool, still linked to the city's ancient, underlying systems. He looked at the energy arch beneath his feet, a conduit of terrifying, unimaginable power. "You built your city on bugs and tape," he whispered to himself. "You just never knew how to kick it." He rerouted the arch's primary energy flow. Not off. Open. The Inquisitors paused, seeing the light on the bridge flicker. "Go," Adrian whispered to the pod. He slammed his fist onto his Omni tool. The entire sky arch in front of him detonated. It was not a fire explosion. It was an explosion of light. A blinding, solid wall of energy erupted from the bridge, a controlled directional blast, vaporizing the first rank of Inquisitors and creating an impassable barrier of raw, solar plasma. The shockwave hit the transport pod, launching it like a bullet into the network of tubes, speeding it away to safety. Adrian was thrown back, his clothes smoking, his skin seared. He collapsed to his knees, his Omni tool melting in his hand. The diversion was complete. He was alone, on a broken bridge, surrounded by fire. He looked up. The second squad of Inquisitors, the ones from the other direction, had not been caught in the blast. They advanced on him, their weapons leveled, their movements slow, cautious. Adrian Cole had no more tricks. He had no more tools. He was just a mechanic. He raised his empty hands. The Inquisitors seized him, binding his arms in energy cuffs. A senior officer, his armor plated in gold, stepped forward. He looked at the human who had just crippled a continent-spanning bridge. He looked at the smoking remains of the hybrid wing components scattered on the deck. "The human advisor," the officer's synthesized voice announced. "The one they call the Empress's collaborator. You are under arrest for treason, terrorism, and crimes against the Aurelian state." Adrian just looked at him, his breath ragged. The officer's calm chimed. A new, cold voice filled the air, a voice Adrian recognized from the broadcast, the voice of Malachar Keth. "Secure the asset, Captain. Bring him to the Obsidian Spire. He is far more than an advisor." There was a pause, a moment of absolute, cold recognition. "After all these years," Malachar's voice whispered, a sound of almost forgotten reverence. "It is an honor to finally meet the Shadow Architect." The Obsidian Spire was a spike of black glass that hung in the sky, suspended by magnetic repulsors over the densest, most toxic layer of Heliora's atmosphere. It was a place of shadows, a political prison built to hold the Empire's most dangerous secrets. It had no exits. To fall from it was to be incinerated by the poison gas layer below. Adrian was in its deepest cell. It was not a cell of stone and bars, but of light. A sphere of hard, white energy contained him in the center of a vast, dark, circular chamber. He wore a simple prisoner's tunic. The energy cuffs were gone. They were unnecessary. His interrogator was not a man. It was the room itself. "The subject is awake," a voice announced. It was synthesized, but not like Echo's fragmented glitching. This voice was ancient, impossibly deep, and resonated with the authority of millennia. It was Spire's voice. It was the voice of the throne. "You are known," the voice stated. It did not ask. It stated. "The designation is Adrian Cole. Species human. Occupation mechanic. This is a false identity." A beam of analytical light, blue and cold, scanned him. "Your biological markers are a match for the file designated Shadow Architect, Contractor, Terran Alliance. Status missing. Presumed dead for 20 standard years. That was another life, Adrian said. His voice was hoarse. The burns from the bridge were a dull throb on his skin. It is the only life we are concerned with, Crown Logic replied. We have reviewed the sensor logs from the Aurelian Crown. Your command codes for the Warden Protocol were authentic. We have questions. I am sure you do, Adrian said. Query. You are the sole designer of the Cinder Halo network. It was not a question. It was an accusation. Yes, Adrian said. There was no point in lying to a being that was, essentially, a god machine. A vast, three-dimensional star chart materialized in the dark around him, formed of cold blue light. It showed a cluster of stars. The Xylos Campaign, Year 349, Imperial Standard. You deployed the Halo network. Adrian looked away. It was a war. It was a demonstration, Crown Logic corrected. The Halo network is not a traditional weapon. It is a strategic tool that functions by creating a localized, asymmetric gravity lens, focusing the target star's corona into a coherent energy stream. It flash boils. It melts fleets. It is efficient. The star chart zoomed in on a system. The Kathir homeworld, neutral. But it was in the gravity well of the target. Your weapon's deployment created a stellar flare that realigned the planet's orbit. Estimated collateral casualties, 60 million. Adrian said nothing. The ghosts of those 60 million souls had been his cellmates for 20 years. Malachar Keth wishes to access the Cinder Halo network, the AI stated. He wishes to use it to pacify the systems on the outer rim that are now in protest over the broadcast. He requires your authorization codes, your mind. So that is it, Adrian spat. You are not an interrogator. You are a tool. You are here to crack me open for him. I am Crown Logic, the voice replied, a note of something almost like offense entering its tone. My primary function is the preservation of the Aurelian throne. My secondary function is to ensure the legitimacy and continuity of the Imperial line. Adrian froze. He saw it. A gap. A flaw. A very human loophole. And Malachar is the line? Adrian challenged. Malachar Keth holds the Imperial scepter. He sits on the Void Throne. He commands the fleet. His possession of the Imperial markers defines him as the legitimate authority. He murdered the man who held them, Adrian countered, his mind suddenly sharp, the fatigue falling away. This was not a fistfight. This was a battle of logic. He broke the continuity with Pulsefire. He is a usurper. The act of usurpation, when successful, becomes legitimacy. Crown Logic replied. It's logic, absolute, cold. The transition of power was violent, but it was complete. My directive is to serve the current throne. So, you serve a murderer. I serve the office. The man is irrelevant, Adrian slumped. It was a perfect, closed loop. The AI was flawless in its rigid, inhuman reasoning. He was trapped. Malachar was the Empire, because the AI said he was. Meanwhile, in the industrial waste sector of Heliora, the opportunity was hidden in a cloud of corrosive exhaust from a fusion plant. The mood inside was poisonous. He is gone, Jonas Pike said, his face gray. They took him. The mission is over. We got out. We are alive. We take the ship, and we jump. No, Seren said. She was standing in the ship's small medbay. Rhea Talik was working on her, her blue fingers moving with furious precision. The explosion had shattered the patched-on wing, but it had also damaged her other wing, the original, organic one. We are not leaving him, Seren stated, her voice a low growl of pain and fury. Your Highness, Rhea said, her voice laced with exasperation as she applied a biosealant to a crack in Seren's wing. In case you missed it, the entire planet is rioting. That broadcast did not just expose Malachar. It painted your architect friend and his entire species as the demons who started the fire. Humans are being hunted in the streets. We are public enemy number one. He saved me, Seren said, flinching as the sealant took hold. He also built the weapons that killed your family, Rhea countered. It is a complicated relationship, but it is over. They have taken him to the Obsidian Spire. Nobody, and I mean nobody, gets out of the spire. He is not nobody, a new voice buzzed. Echo's floating orb detached from the console. Its light was flickering with a manic energy. The architect. He is complex. He is flawed. He is human. What is your point? You broke your compass, Jonas snapped. The spire, Echo said. I have analyzed its schematics. They are old. Very old. It is not connected to the main city grid. It has its own power, its own network. An old isolated data conduit. A relic. The broadcast jamming does not affect it. Seren looked up, her violet eyes locking onto the AI. Can you get in? I can try, Echo said. But the spire is controlled by Crown Logic. It is an ancient, fundamental AI. It is not a machine. It is a religion. I cannot fight it. You do not have to fight it, Seren said, standing up, the new sealant holding. She flexed her one good wing. It was functional. You just have to get us inside. The city is in chaos. Malachar has deployed the fleet to the outer sectors to control the riots. He thinks he is safe. He is, Rhea said. The spire is a fortress. Every fortress has a sewer, Jonas muttered, suddenly interested. Echo this data conduit. Where does it surface? A waste heat recycling pylon. Echo buzzed. On the lowest level, directly beneath the prison itself. It is an assassination, Rhea realized, her eyes wide. You are not rescuing him. You are going to kill Malachar. Malachar will be in the spire, Seren said, her face a mask of cold resolve. He will be convincing Adrian. I am going to pay my blood debt. And I am getting my architect back. Jonas looked at the determination on her face. He looked at the insanity of the plan. He let out a long sigh. This is bad for my health. Rhea, you stay with the ship. Keep the engines warm. Like hell I am, Rhea spat, grabbing her trauma kit. You are going to get yourselves shot, perforated, and probably incinerated. Who is going to patch you up, this flying scrap heap? She tapped Echo's orb. You need a doctor. Let us go. Back in the cell of light, Adrian was running out of options. Your logic is flawed. Crown Logic, he tried again. You serve the throne. The people are the throne, and the people are in chaos. Malachar has turned them against themselves. Irrelevant, the AI replied. The people are a resource. The throne is the constant. Malachar provides stability. Stability is legitimacy. You are just a machine, Adrian whispered, defeated. You cannot understand duty, honor, justice. They are abstract concepts, replied AI. I compute. I do not understand. Then compute this, a new voice, fragmented and weak, suddenly spoke in Adrian's mind. It was not Crown Logic. It was Echo. Adrian's head snapped up. Echo, he whispered. I am in... Echo's voice was faint. I am in the network. Oh, this is a big system. Very clean. Very rigid. He is here. Architect. The big, cold one. He does not like me. Crown Logic, said Adrian. A new variable has entered the equation. A ghost in your machine. A subprogram has been detected. Crown Logic acknowledged. Its voice was unchanged, but the blue light in the room pulsed, just once. A fragmented, corrupted human-influenced AI. It is attempting to access the strategic definition matrix. Siren, Adrian breathed. She is here. The renegade Empress is confirmed, Crown Logic stated. She has breached the lower pylon. She is accompanied by the human smuggler, Jonas Pike, and the Xylosian, Dr. Rhea Talik. They are ascending. Stop them, a new, furious voice commanded. The cell door dissolved, revealing Grand Admiral Malachar Keth, flanked by 4 elite Crimson Guard. He looked furious. Riots were clearly not part of his plan. Crown Logic, Malachar snapped. Seal the lower levels. Send all internal defense drones to Pylon 4. And prepare the Halo network for activation. Acknowledged, the AI replied. You look tired, Architect, Malachar said, stepping into the chamber. He studied Adrian, not as a prisoner, but as a prize. This AI is stubborn. It refuses to accept my commands for the Halo. It insists on authorization. From its creator. I will not help you, Adrian spat. Oh, you will, Malachar said, a cold smile touching his lips. You see, I was there. At the Xylos campaign. I was a young lieutenant on the Iron Will's sister ship. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. I watched your work. I watched the Cinder Halo ignite. I saw it turn a Kathir dreadnought, a ship that had terrorized the sector for a decade, into steam in 3 seconds. I watched it boil a planet's atmosphere by accident. Malachar's eyes were burning with a terrifying and fanatic light. And in that moment, I knew that our empire, for all its glory, for all its tradition, could never compete with a species that could produce a mind like yours. We are rigid, we are honorable, Styr. We are predictable. Your species, you are illogical, you are chaos, you are a plague. So you murdered a government, Adrian said. I saved my people, Malachar roared. I did what the late Emperor was too weak, too trusting to do. He wanted to ally with you. I knew you could only be controlled. I took the throne to force order, on a chaotic universe to take your fire, your terrible, beautiful human fire, and put it under the rigid, sane control of an Aurelian mind. My mind. He gestured to Adrian. You are not a person, Architect. You are a weapon and the greatest weapon ever built, and I will wield you. Now give me the Halo. No. Then I will take it, Malachar said. He signaled to his guards. They produced a device, a crown of needles and wires. A neural extractor, Rao. It will be painful. It will destroy your mind, but it will give me what I need. Echo, Adrian shouted. A desperate, last-ditch gamble. He is threatening the Architect. He is threatening the network. Link me. Link me to the Matrix now. Adrian, I cannot. Echo's voice shrieked in his head. It is too much. Crown Logic, Adrian yelled, as the guards advanced. A threat. A direct threat to the Cinder Halo network. Your primary directives are to protect the throne. My designs are the throne's primary defense. Malachar is attempting to destroy the network by destroying its architect. He is violating the mandate of protection. The blue light in the room pulsed, faster and faster. Analyzing, Crown Logic's voice was stressed. Variable. The architect is a strategic asset. Variable Malachar is the legitimate ruler. Variable. The ruler is attempting to destroy the asset. Paradox. 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 He is not the ruler, Adrian roared, pressing his advantage. Legitimacy is not possession. Legitimacy is duty. He has failed his duty. Echo, now give me the key. Linking, Echo screamed. A torrent of pure, Cold data flooded Adrian's mind. It was not human. It was ancient, vast, and geometric. He was inside Crown logic. He was not just a prisoner. He was a program. At that exact moment, the bedroom wall exploded. Seren Kalis burst through, not as a renegade, but as a Valkyrie. She now had two wings. Her original, organic one, and a new one. A masterpiece of Xylosian biomechanics and human-style improvisation, clearly built by Rhea. They were wings of fire and light. Jonas Pike and Rhea Talik were right behind her, laying down covering fire. "Malachar!" Seren screamed, her voice echoing with pure hatred. She ignited a plasma blade. "Kill them all," Malachar ordered his guards. "But save the human's head." A three-way battle erupted. Seren, a whirlwind of bronze and fire, engaged Malachar, her twin wings giving her unnatural speed and power. Jonas and Rhea fought a desperate, running battle with the Crimson Guard, using grenades and raw, percussive firepower. But the spire itself had turned against them. Drones and turrets, controlled by the confused Crown logic, were firing on everyone. "Adrian!" Rhea yelled, ducking under a turret's beam. "A little help, if you are not too busy having a philosophical crisis." Adrian was on his knees, his eyes closed, his body rigid. He was not in the room. He was in the network. He saw it all. The spire, the city, the fleet in orbit, slowly, arrogantly bringing its systems back online. He saw the Cinder Halo network, a spider web of gravity lenses across the galaxy, sleeping, waiting for his command. He had the key. He could end the riots. He could end Malachar. He could boil the iron will from the sky. He saw the Kathir homeworld, burning. He saw 60 million ghosts. "Echo," he whispered on the network. "Invert the matrix. I am not focusing. I am disarming." "Adrian," Echo's voice was full of awe. "That is not what it was built for." "I am rebuilding it," Adrian said. He grabbed the network. He felt the power of a dozen stars in his mind. He took the gravity lens protocol, the equation that focused death, and he broke it. He rewrote the core command. Not focus. Diffuse. He activated the Cinder Halo. Across Heliora, time stopped. A wave of pure, white light, soft as silk, washed over the planet. It had no heat. It had no sound. It was just light, in orbit. The iron will went dark. The entire Fifth Fleet, the pride of the Empire, went dark. Their reactors died. Their weapons failed. Their engines went cold. In the spire, the drones fell from the sky. The turrets went silent. The Crimson Guard's armor locked up, their weapons useless. The only things still working were the opportunities scavenged, human-built pulse rifles, and Seren's hybrid wings. The wave of light, a galaxy-wide, non-lethal electromagnetic pulse, had disarmed the entire Aurelian military. In the sudden, profound silence, Malachar and Seren stood facing each other. Malachar's armor was smoking, his weapons dead. Seren's plasma blade was still lit. He lunged, a desperate animalistic roar. She met his charge, not with fire, but with ice. She spun, disarmed him, and slammed the pommel of her blade into his temple. He collapsed, unconscious. She stood over him, her blade at his throat, her chest heaving, the blood debt, the roar of her murdered family in her ears. "Seren!" Adrian's voice was a ragged gasp. He was back in his body, kneeling, the neural link severed. Do not become him." She looked at Adrian. She saw the man who had destroyed her life. She let out a long, shuddering breath and extinguished her blade. At that moment, the Spire's own internal defense drones' older models, not tied to the Halo network, activated. They were gray, not crimson, They swarmed the room, cuffing the stunned Crimson Guard and securing the unconscious Malachar. Crown Logic's voice filled the room, now calm, steady. Legitimacy restored, the usurper. Malachar Keth is in custody. The mandate of protection is intact. All hail the Empress. Seren stared as they dragged Malachar's body away. It is over, Jonas breathed, sinking to the floor. Not quite, Malachar's voice, muffled, came from the hallway. His eyes were open. He was beaten, but he was not broken. He looked, not at Adrian, but at Seren. You fool, he spat. You think you have won, you think this is over. He laughed, a dry rattling sound. This was just layer 1. My coup was just a symptom. Do you want the truth? He stared at Seren, a look of pure, venomous pity on his face. Ask your architect. Ask him about the first agreement, the one your father made, the one you were trained for. The gray drones dragged him away, his laughter echoing down the dark hall. Ceresen turned, her face pale, to Adrian. What did he mean? Adrian looked at his hands. He had just held the power of a god, and he had chosen mercy. But the victory felt cold, hollow. The ghosts were still there, and they were whispering. The disarm wave of the cinder halo, a silent, tidal wave of energy neutralization, had settled over Heliora, like a shroud. In the obsidian spire, the sudden, profound silence was deafening. The hum of weapons, the whine of armor servos, the scream of turrets all gone. Jonas Pike was the first to speak, his voice ragged in silence. He lowered his pulse rifle, which was now just an inert piece of metal. What, in the name of the void, did you do? Adrian Cole was on his knees, trembling, the mental feedback from communion with Crown Logic and the Halo network leaving him hollowed out. I inverted the polarity, he gasped. I turned a rifle into a circuit breaker, a very large circuit breaker. In the center of the room, Seren stood over the unconscious Malachar, her twin wings, one organic, one mechanical flickering with residual light. The gray, ancient drones of the spire, unaffected by the halo pulse, were efficiently cuffing the immobilized Crimson Guard and dragging Malachar's inert form away. Then Spire's voice returned, Crown Logic. It was no longer stressed. It was not paradoxical. It was cold, clear, and absolute. The paradox is resolved, the ancient AI announced, its voice resonating through the stone. The entity Malachar Keth defined his rule by the mandate of protection. By attempting to destroy the primary strategic asset, the architect, he violated his own mandate. He introduced terminal instability. The blue light in the room shifted, softening, its focus moving from Adrian to Seren. The entity Seren Kalis acted in defense of the strategic asset and the integrity of the Imperial network. The entity Adrian Cole resolved the instability by choosing a path of non-lethal de-escalation, preserving the Imperial fleet while neutralizing the usurper's threat. Stability is restored. So we are good, Jonas asked, wiping sweat from his brow. Legitimacy, Crown Logic stated, is the restoration of order. The original logs from the Aurelian crown, preserved by the entity Echo, confirm the line of succession was broken by Malachar Keth. The line is now restored. All hail Seren Kalis, Void Empress of the Aurelian Star Empire. The coup chaos was over. The chaos of rebuilding was just beginning. Seren's coronation was no celebration. It was a triage. Heliora was a planet deeply divided. Malachar's propaganda had been brutally effective. The populace, already reeling from the assassination of their emperor, had been fed a simple, satisfying narrative the humans were to blame. And the renegade empress, Seren was their puppet. When Seren, flanked by the gray, impassive drones of Crown Logic, stood on the balcony of the Imperial Spire, the crowds below were a swirling mass of confusion. Half the planet cheered, hailing the return of the true bloodline. The other half hissed, chanting human lover. Puppet Empress. The Fifth Fleet, neutralized and adrift in orbit, had surrendered. Their admirals claimed, in transmissions of flawless, calculated contrition, that they had been deceived by Malakar's lies. It was all too fast, too easy. Adrian Cole watched the coronation from a kilometer away, standing in the shadows of a high-level gantry, hidden from the public, the press, and the political actors. He was a ghost again. He was, simultaneously, the hero who had disarmed the fleet and the monster whose name was synonymous with galactic genocide. He was the Shadow Architect. He was the human plague Malakar had warned them about. He was a symbol, and his very presence at her side poisoned her new, fragile reign. That night, he met her in the Imperial private chambers. The opulence of the rooms, all spun crystal and hanging silks, felt wrong, like a tomb. "You are fading," she said, her voice heavy. She had not slept. She wore the heavy, formal robes of the Empress, and they looked like armor. "I have to," he replied, staying near the door. "I am a liability. Malakar's last move was to make me toxic. As long as the Shadow Architect is seen advising the new Empress, you will never be seen as legitimate. You will be the puppet he claimed you were." "You are not a puppet master," she said, her voice fierce. "You are Adrian." Adrian was a mechanic, he said, a sad smile touching his lips. "The Architect is something else, and they hate him. Both are peoples." She knew he was right. The United Human Economic Council, furious at the disruption of their plans and the exposure, had publicly disavowed him, labeling him a rogue agent and terrorist. The Aurelians saw him as the demon who had designed the Cinder Halo. He was a man without a species, without a home. "So, what will you do?" she asked, her voice small. "Where will you go?" "I was thinking," he said, glancing at the polished floor. "You are an empress now. You have a fleet. You have a palace. And you have a squadron of royal biofighters that have probably been sitting in a hangar, collecting dust, ever since." She looked at him, a spark of understanding in her weary, violet eyes. "I figure," he continued, shrugging, "that you probably need a good mechanic. Someone to check fluids, calibrate engines, someone invisible, someone no one would ever look for. Just a human grease monkey, working in the Royal Hangar Bay, keeping his head down." She crossed the room, the heavy robes whispering. She stood before him. She was the Void Empress, ruler of 10,000 suns. He was just a man in a borrowed tunic. "A mechanic," she said. "Lowest possible security clearance," he offered. "I just fix things." Seren raised a hand, as if to touch his face, but stopped, her fingers trembling slightly. The formality of the throne room was between them. "The Royal Hangar Bay is yours, Mechanic Cole. Do not break anything else." "I will do my best, Your Highness." The morning tea ritual returned. It was different. The setting was no longer a grime-caked, chaotic maintenance bay on a lawless ring. It was a secret garden, high on the palace spire, a breathtaking cascade of alien flora, and hovering, crystalline waterfalls. The time was station morning no longer. It was the first light of Heliora's dawn. And she, the Empress of the galaxy, came to him. He was sitting on a stone bench, looking over the awakening city, when he heard her footsteps. He stood, ready to bow. "Sit down, Adrian," she said, her voice soft, devoid of its imperial command. She was not in her robes. She wore a simple, functional flight suit. In her hands, she carried the old, dented thermal flask she had salvaged from her crashed fighter. She sat beside him. The distance between them was formal, correct, but the flask was not. She produced two simple, ceramic cups, no royal porcelain. She poured the steaming, amber liquid. The scent of mountain blossoms and starlight filled the air. A memory of smoke and desperation. A reminder of their beginning. She handed him his cup. He took it. Their fingers brushed. It was a spark of warmth in the cold, political morning. "You still carry that thing," he murmured, sipping the tea. It tasted like hope. "It is a reminder," she said, cradling her own cup. "Those things can be dented, but still functional. That they still hold what matters." They sat in silence for a time, watching the city's light bridges flare to life. "They hate me down there," she said quietly. "I know. The old guard admirals, the High Council. They see my reforms. They resist. You are trying to change a system that has been rigid for 1,000 years, Adrian said. They do not like change. We are changing it, she corrected. The we hung in the air, a bond as strong as the tea. They were working. In the shadows of the royal hangar, surrounded by schematics, they were drafting the new Imperial Code. The Cinder Halo network had been Adrian's first unilateral act of reform. The disarm wave, as the public now dubbed it, was permanent. He and Seren, with Crown Logic's full, calculated cooperation, were systematically dismantling it. The age of superweapons was over. They were opening the councils. For the first time, non-Aurelian species, even humans, represented by a terrified diplomatic attaché, were given a voice in the legislature. They were drafting the Architect's Protocols, laws of transparency, mandates that all high-level AI, including Crown Logic, must have their core directives audited by a multi-species ethical board. It was a law born of Adrian's own guilt. Never again would one mind be allowed to build a weapon that could boil a world. Jonas left, Adrian said, staring into his cup. I know. He took the opportunity. Seren smiled faintly. I reassigned his title, along with a substantial salvage fee. He will be back, Adrian said. He hates respectable work. And Rhea. Dr. General Talek is terrorizing the entire Imperial Medical Corps, Seren said, the smile reaching her eyes. She has already declared half our medical procedures barbaric and replaced them with creative engineering. I think she is enjoying herself. The moment of peace was warm. It was the eye of the storm. Echo has found something, Seren said, her voice losing its warmth. Something bad, it was not a question. Something is missing, Echo. The fragmented, half-mad AI had become something new, linked to the vast, cold intellect of Crown Logic. It had become the Empire's ghost in the machine. It was Adrian's personal investigator, scouring the millennia of Imperial data, looking for the rot that Malachar had hinted at. The logs we retrieved from the Crown, Seren said, her voice dropping. The financial data. Evidence of Heck's involvement. It is gone. Adrian looked at her. Gone. We had it. We broadcast it. The original files, she clarified. The raw data, buried in my father's black box. Echo went to retrieve it from Crown Logic's memory, to prepare it for Malachar's trial. It is not just deleted. It has been excised, surgically. The data space where it existed has been overwritten, not with static, but with clean, perfect, ancient Imperial code. It is as if it never existed. A high-level wipe, Adrian breathed. Who has that kind of access? No one, Seren said, her eyes dark. Not even me. Not even Malachar. The authorization codes are pre-imperial. They are older than the throne itself. A cold dread settled over the garden. There is more, she continued. The Fifth Fleet, Malachar's loyalists, the ones who surrendered so easily. Echo has been cross-referencing their service records. The admirals who repented and swore fealty to me were all promoted, not by Malachar, but by my father. Years ago, they were his men, not Malachar's. The implications were sickening. They did not surrender to you, Adrian realized. They just returned to the original plan. What plan? Adrian. Before he could answer, a high-level aide, a stiff-backed Aurelian noble, entered the garden. He flinched at the sight of the Empress, sitting so informally with the human mechanic. But he bowed deeply. Your Highness, my apologies. A Priority 1 message. It is a leak. From Malachar's holding cell. He is awaiting execution, and he has released a final statement. He handed her a data slate. Adrian watched her face as she read. He saw her composure, the imperial mask, crack. Her bronze skin became pale. Her hand trembled. Just once. Leave us, she commanded. The aide vanished. Seren! She did not speak. She handed him the slate. He read it. It was not a confession. It was not a plea for mercy. It was a manifesto. A boast. Malachar called himself a purist, a true Aurelian. He claimed he had not been a traitor, but a scalpel. The Empire was sick, he had written. It was infested with a human-born cancer, a plot decades in the making. The UHX did not start the conspiracy. They were just partners in it. Partners with a weak, decadent throne. Adrian's heart hammered. The late Emperor, my mentor, my brother, the statement continued, was a fool. He believed the only way to save the Empire from its stagnation was to burn the forest to save the trees. He and his human architect planned to use the halo, to create a controlled burn on the outer rim, to sacrifice a few billion to justify a new, joint human Aurelian military state. A new order. Adrian looked up from the slate, his blood ice. He is lying. He is trying to poison your father's memory. Is he? Seren whispered. She was staring at the skyline, but not seeing it. He mentioned the Xylos campaign. The Cathir sacrifice. She turned to him, her violet eyes swimming with a terrible, dawning horror. A memory, fragmented, rising from the depths. When I was very young, she said, her voice hollow, I sat in on my father's strategic briefings. I did not understand them. They called them simulations, war games. There was one about the Cathir system. They called it acceptable collateral damage. She looked at Adrian, her gaze piercing, desperate. He is lying. My father would not plan that. But the doubt was there. A poison. Malachar's final move. He had not just hinted. He had given them the exact key to unlock the truth. Adrian looked at the dented thermal flask on the bench between them. He looked at the Empress, who had lost her family, and the mechanic who had built the gun. Malachar had not had the disease. He had just been a symptom, a rival doctor, trying to cure the same disease, but with more brutal surgery. The real guilt, the original sin, was still buried. He wrote one more thing, Seren whispered, her voice breaking. He said I was not just a witness. He said I was trained for it, that my father was preparing me to accept the necessary sacrifice. Adrian said nothing. He had no words. He looked at the woman he cared for, the woman he had saved, and he realized, with a dawning, sickening certainty, that they were both, in their own ways, profoundly guilty. They sat in the morning garden, two traumatized souls, surrounded by the ruins of one war, staring into the abyss of a much older, deeper one. The tea in their cups had cooled. The dawn was early. Heliora's star had not yet breached the planet's curve, but its light was a faint, violet promise on the horizon. The hanging garden was silent, save for the whisper of the gravity deflectors and the chime of the crystalline waterfalls. Adrian Cole sat on the stone bench, his traditional place. He wore the simple gray tunic of a palace technician. He looked at the city below, still mostly dark, but alive with the nervous energy of a new, uncertain era. He heard her footsteps, light and sure. She was early. Seren Kalis approached, not in the heavy, armored robes of the Void Empress, but in the simple flight suit she had worn on the opportunity. It was a silent, shared statement. In this garden, at this hour, they were not the Empress and the Architect. They were just Seren and Adrian. In her hands, she carried the dented thermal flask. "You are going to wear a groove in that bench, mechanic," she said, her voice soft in the pre-dawn quiet. "And you, Your Highness, are going to be late for your first High Council meeting," he replied, not turning. She sat, leaving a respectful, painful distance between them. She poured the kesh. The steam rose, smelling of home, of fire, of desperation. "I think," she said, handing him the cup, "that the High Council can wait. They are all cowards, anyway. They spent the last 2 weeks debating the ethics of executing Malachar, and the last 2 days debating the color of the new curtains for the throne room." "Priorities," Adrian agreed, taking the cup. Their fingers brushed. The spark was still there, a small, fragile thing they both refused to acknowledge. "At least Rhea is making progress," Seren said, a small smile touching her lips. "She declared the entire Imperial medical database a homeopathic disaster and threatened to eject the Surgeon General into the sun. I think he is terrified of her." "As he should be," Adrian said. "And Jonas, he sent a message from the Xylo system. He said he regretfully salvaged a shipment of rare wines that was intended for the UHISA. He sends his condolences." They laughed. It was a real, unguarded sound. A moment of peace. It was shattered by a chime. It was not a palisade. It was Adrian's private omnitool, the one he had salvaged from the opportunity. He looked at the message. It was from Echo. "What is it?" Seren asked, her brief happiness vanishing. "It is done," Adrian said, his voice flat. "Echo and Crown Logic. They finished the decryption. That pre-imperial data key Malachar was using. The one that wiped your father's logs." He set his teacup down. His hand was perfectly steady. "They did not just find the key. They found the lock. They found the original file. The one Malachar tried to copy, and the one he tried to erase. The truth." He tapped the Omnitool. A secure data slate on the bench between them lit up. It was not a messy collection of files. It was a single, elegant, terrifyingly formal document, the Helios Compact. It was a treaty, signed 30 standard years ago. The signatories were Emperor Valeris Kalis and the Board of Directors for the United Human Economic Council. Seren stopped breathing. Adrian read the summary, his voice hollow. It was a plan, a joint operation. The Empire was stagnating. The UHEC wanted resources. The outer rim worlds, like the Cathir, were unstable. He looked at her, his eyes dead. They did not stumble into a war. They designed one. The compact was explicit, a staged, limited conflict, a necessary cleansing. The UHEC would provide covert financing and logistics. The Empire would provide the legitimate military force, and the shadow architect Adrian Cole would provide the strategy. Project Cinder, Adrian whispered, the name from Malakar's logs tasting like poison. It was not Malakar's protocol. It was ours. The Xylos campaign. 60 million Kathir died. It was not acceptable collateral damage. It was the plan. It was Phase 1, a demonstration designed to terrify the Outer Rim into submission and justify a new, joint, Aurelian human military state. A new order, built on a foundation of cinders. Seren was white. Her hands clenched so hard, her knuckles were bloodless. "My father," she whispered. "He did this." "And I," Adrian said, "was his pen. I drew the maps. I targeted the world. I fled to the Meridian Ring, telling myself I was running from the war. But I was not. I was running from this, from the truth. That I was not just a tool. I was a partner." The screen flickered, showing a new file, Malakar's file. He had been Emperor Valeris's protege, his most trusted admiral. He was to be the enforcer of the Helios Compact. But he saw it as weak. He saw the human partnership as an infestation. He did not betray the Empire, Adrian realized, the full, sickening weight of it crashing down. He hijacked the betrayal. He saw the plan. He saw the tools we built. And he decided to use them to cleanse both sides. He killed your father for being weak enough to trust humans. And he used the UHAC's own complicity to frame them, to turn the Empire against them. He did not start the fire, he just aimed it. Seren stood up, walking to the edge of the garden, her back to him. She was shaking. "He murdered my family," she said, her voice a low, broken thing. "He murdered them because my father was already a monster." "Seren, do not," the data slate chimed again. One final file. Echo's voice came from the device, fragmented, almost gentle. "A subdirectory has been decrypted," the AI buzzed. "File name Inheritance Protocol, sealed by order of Emperor Valeris. Security key the architect." "What?" Adrian said. "The file is personal," Echo said. "It is a memory log. Crown Logic was ordered to seal this data from the Empress's own mind. The trigger for the unsealing was the return of the architect." "Play it," Adrian commanded, his heart a cold stone. The slate's image shimmered. It was not a document. It was a recording, a room, the Imperial Strategy Chamber, a man who looked like an older, regal Seren Emperor Valeris, and a hologram, flickering, of a younger Adrian Cole, dark-haired, arrogant, his face the cold mask of the Shadow Architect, and a girl of perhaps 16 years, Seren, dressed in a formal, military-style cadet's uniform. She was watching the star chart, her expression focused, intelligent, cold. "The Kathir system is the pivot," the holographic Adrian was saying. "A demonstration here will cascade through the entire sector. Pacification will be total." "The cost," Emperor Valeris said, his eyes on his daughter. "The cost," young Seren replied, her voice clear, reciting a lesson, "is secondary to the stability of the throne. The individual system is meaningless. The Empire is all. A surgeon must sometimes cut a limb to save the body. It is a necessary sacrifice." The recording shifted. Emperor Valeris, alone. He was addressing the empty room, addressing Crown Logic. "She understands the logic," he said, his voice heavy, almost sad. "She is strong. She will be ready to rule. But the burden of this abstract is not the same as the reality. When it is done, when the compact is complete, she must not remember this. She must not remember agreeing. Seal this memory. Seal her complicity. Let her rule with a clear conscience. It is my final mercy." The recording ended. In the garden, Saren Kalis fell to her knees. It was not a memory she had watched. It was a memory she had regained. She remembered the cold room, the tactical maps, the arrogance of the shadow architect on the screen, her father's voice, teaching her, the chill of the words as she spoke them. A necessary sacrifice. She had agreed. In principle. In the cold, abstract logic of a princess general, she had agreed to the logic that had led to the Kathir genocide. "I knew," she whispered, her hands clawing at the stone. "I was one of them. Her entire quest. Her rage. Her righteous, burning need for vengeance against Malachar. It was all a lie. A mercy. A program. Malachar had murdered her family. Yes. But he had murdered them using a plan her father had created. A plan Adrian had designed. And a plan she had accepted. The silence in the garden was absolute. Adrian stood, looking at the woman he had come to love. The woman he had crossed the galaxy to save. The woman who had, in turn, saved him. He was the man who had drawn the plans for the slaughterhouse. She was the heir who had agreed it needed to be built. "We are monsters," she whispered, looking up at him, her violet eyes shattered, raw, annihilated. He was just the only one honest about it. The internal conflict exploded. The pain was physical. This was the true poison. Malachar's final, posthumous victory. "Who are we?" she cried, her voice rising. "Who am I? I wear this crown. I sit on that throne. I am a fraud." "No," Adrian said, his voice rough. He knelt in front of her, but did not touch her. "Yes, I am. My entire life is a lie built by my father, and by you. You are the ghost of my family's sin." Yes," he said. He did not deny it. He met her gaze. I am everything they say I am. A monster. A mass murderer. I designed the weapon that killed 60 million people as Phase 1. I did it for a challenge. For a paycheck. Because I was arrogant, and I could." He looked at his hands. "And you were a child, indoctrinated, taught that the throne was more important than a soul. And when the reality of it came for you, your father's mercy was to break your mind, to turn you into a puppet who did not even know her own strings." He stood up. "We are the walking, breathing proof that this empire, that the Yushek, that all of it is built on a foundation of lies, of necessary sacrifices." He looked at the data slate, still glowing on the bench. "Crown logic," he said, his voice quiet. "Echo, this file, the inheritance protocol, the Helios Compact. Who has access?" "Access is limited," Crown Logic's voice replied from a hidden speaker. "To this terminal, to the Void Empress, and to the Architect. The pre-imperial seals are formidable. We can re-engage them. The data can be erased. Permanently." The temptation was suffocating. They could bury it. They could erase the file. They could execute Malachar, the lone usurper. They could pin everything on the Yuhek. Seren could rule. Adrian could advise. They could fix it. They could build the new, better empire they had been dreaming of. They could use the lie to build a good, honest future. It was the sane choice, the political choice, the Aurelian choice. We could just," Seren whispered, getting to her feet. "We could make it right. All this pain. It will be for nothing if we tear it all down now." Adrian looked at her. He saw the child who had been taught to choose the empire over her conscience. "And what happens in 20 years?" he asked, his voice soft. "When a new unstable sector emerges? When do we have to decide on a necessary sacrifice? What do we do then, Seren? Who do we lie to? Who do we program?" He picked up the data slate, This, he said, holding it up, is the disease, not Malachar, not the Uhek. This, the idea that the truth is a commodity, the idea that leaders can edit reality for the greater good. He looked at her, his eyes pleading. It is the logic your father used. It is the logic I used. It is the logic Malachar used. And it will always end in fire. He handed her the slate. We are not them, he said. I am a human. We are flawed. We are chaotic. We are arrogant. But we are another, Seren. We are capable of shame. We are capable of atonement. He was offering her the choice, the human choice, the illogical, chaotic, self-destructive, honest choice. Seren looked at the slate. She looked at the man who was offering it, the man who was as guilty as she was, the man who was offering them not victory, not peace, but redemption. Her hand, trembling, closed over the slate. She walked to the main garden console, the one linked directly to Crown Logic and the Imperial Broadcast Network. She looked at the throne room, glittering in the first rays of the sun. She looked at her crown, sitting on a silk pillow. She would lose it all. They would call for her head. They would call for him. They would be tried, executed. She looked back at Adrian. He had not moved. He was just watching her, trusting her. She slammed the data slate into the port. Crown Logic, she said, her voice shaking, but clear, clearer than it had been in her entire life. Your Highness. Broadcast this, Seren Kalis, the Void Empress, commanded. The entire file, the Helios Compact, the Inheritance Protocol, my father's plan, the Architect's involvement, and my own. Your Highness, Crown Logic protested, its voice laced with synthesized alarm. That is strategically terminal. It will destabilize the throne. It will cause galactic-wide chaos. I know, Seren said. Do it. All channels. Unencrypted. Unedited. No seals. She turned back to Adrian, just as the data stream hit the network. That, she said, is my first and maybe my last act as Empress. The galaxy did not just react, it combusted. The days that followed were a blur of screaming static. The Aurelian populace, horrified, learning their sainted murdered emperor was a conspirator. The UHEC, imploding, as its board was arrested by its own internal security, their stock market vanishing in a puff of smoke. And the Outer Rim, the Cathir, the Xylos. The 60 million ghosts finally had a voice, and they were screaming for blood, for justice, for the head of the Shadow Architect, and for the trial of the complicit Empress. But something else happened, from the chaos. A new, strange signal emerged, a fleet of ships, from systems Seren had never even heard of. A coalition of worlds, human and alien, that had been crushed by both the UHEC and the Empire. They were not calling for execution. They were calling for a summit. They were supporting the transparent throne, the only two leaders in the galaxy who had ever told the truth, even when it cost them everything. Weeks later, the main spire of the Heliora Palace, the sky was full, hundreds of ships, of every design, hung in the air. Cathir dreadnoughts, Xylosian biocruisers, rogue Terran Alliance gunships. They were not attacking. They were waiting. Seren stood at the great vaulted window, looking out. She wore the full, heavy robes of her office. She was, for now, still the Empress. Adrian stood beside her. He was not in the shadows. He was at her side, wearing his simple mechanic's tunic, a symbol. The Architect and the Empress, the two who had confessed. An aide's voice, trembling, came over the intercom. Your Highness. The delegates from all 112 systems have arrived for the Galactic Reconciliation Summit. Seren let out a slow breath. It was the start of something new. Or it was their trial. She turned to Adrian. On the table beside her, sitting on the imperial silk, was the dented thermal flask. She had already poured the tea. She picked up a cup and handed it to him. The ritual, the constant. "If they depose me tomorrow, Adrian," she asked, her voice quiet, a ghost of their old humor in her eyes. "If they take all of this away, will you still fix my wing?" Adrian looked at her, at the Empress, at the woman, at Seren. He took the cup. Their hands were steady. "As long as you still bring the tea," he replied, his voice rough. "I will fix everything that is broken." He held her gaze. "Including myself." He drank. She drank. Together. They turned to the window, to face the galaxy they had broken, and the one they would, now, finally, begin to heal.